In my past life, the other children looked down on our mother, but I was the only one who took care of her diligently for 30 years. Yet on her deathbed, she didn't leave me a single cent of her property. Instead, she falsely accused me of abusing her, blamed me for her paralysis, and teamed up with others to spread rumors and cyberbully me. When I opened my eyes again, I didn't say a word, I just turned around and walked away. Hello everyone. Welcome to Empress Revenge Stories. Let's begin. The smell of disinfectant hit my nose when I thought I was still in hell. That smell was too familiar. I had smelled it for 30 years in my past life. From age 23 to 53. From a fresh college graduate to a wrinkled, gray-haired woman. Disinfectant, urine, bedsore ointment, those three smells mixed together were my entire life in my past life. Wait, wasn't I dead? My eyes snapped open. A harsh fluorescent light hung above my head, staring down at me like a cold eye. The beeping of monitors and the low murmur of nearby families filled my ears. My body was frozen on the caregiver's chair. My back sore and numb from sleeping bent over for too long. A line of dried drool at the corner of my mouth. The caregiver's chair, the hospital's caregiver's chair. I looked down at my hands. Smooth skin, flexible joints. No rheumatoid deformities from years of handling cold water. No thick calluses from turning my mother over. These hands were clean, still with the youthful plumpness of a young person. I touched my face. No crow's feet at the corners of my eyes. A smooth forehead. No white stubble on my chin from years of exhaustion. I'm a woman, where would stubble come from? In my past life, I was so exhausted that sometimes I forgot I was a woman at all. I slowly turned my head and saw the person in the hospital bed, my mother, Zhou Xiaolan. She lay there, gray-haired, her face sallow, an oxygen mask over her mouth, several tubes running in and out of her body. The medical record card at the head of the bed showed the date, September 17, 2016. Next to it was a hospital payment slip for 12,000 yuan, with my name signed in the payers column. September 17th. That date pierced my brain like a knife. September 17, 2016, the day my mother suffered a cerebral hemorrhage that left her paralyzed from the waist down. And the first day of my past life being completely locked into that house. I stood up and walked to the window of the hospital room, looking at my reflection in the glass. 23 years old, a low ponytail, a faded blue t-shirt, dark circles under my eyes from lack of sleep. But still, it was a young face. At 23, so many girls are just graduating, just falling in love, just filled with anticipation for life. And me, the me of my past life, from this day forward, lived like a walking corpse. I turned back to look at Zhou Xiaolan in the bed. Her eyes were closed, her breathing steady. She looked like she was asleep, but I knew she wasn't asleep. She was pretending. My past life experience told me that whenever she pretended to sleep, she would deliberately slow her breathing to an unnatural degree. Because a truly sleeping person's breathing has fluctuations. But hers was too even, too deliberate, with a hint of performance. That realization had taken me over a decade to figure out. When she pretended to sleep, she was either eavesdropping or planning her next act. Xiaohe, sure enough, she was awake. Zhou Xiaolan's eyes fluttered open, her voice so weak it seemed to squeeze out of her throat. She reached her hand toward me, grasping at the air. That hand had an 4-line in it, and her movements were deliberately small, pitiful to the extreme. Xiaohe, is Mama going to die? Mama can't feel her legs at all. Xiaohe, what's Mama going to do? Tears came instantly, mixing with snot as they poured down her face. Her whole body trembled as she cried. I had seen this scene countless times in my past life. Every time, I would throw myself into her arms, crying with her, telling her, "Don't be afraid. Mama, I'm here. I'll take care of you forever." 30 years. I truly took care of her for 30 years. From age 23 to 53. I never dated, never married, never worked a proper job for a single day. My job was picking up odd freelance work at home, earning a little money while caring for her, turning her over, washing her, handling her bathroom needs, massaging her atrophied muscles, pushing her wheelchair out for sun. 365 months, over 10,000 days and nights. I never traveled once. Never had a full meal with friends. Never even watched an entire movie. Whenever I went out to buy groceries, it was like stealing, my phone on vibrate, clutched in my hand, terrified of missing her call to come home. My older brother and sister would visit occasionally, stay half an hour, and leave. Before leaving, they'd sigh and pat my shoulder, saying, "Little sister, you've worked hard." On holidays, they'd bring fruit and supplements, and mother would wipe away tears of gratitude, praising them in front of all the relatives for being filial and considerate, her devoted children. And me, I stayed by her bedside day and night. She never once praised me in front of others. Occasionally, a relative would feel it was too much and say, "Xiao, he really has a hard time." Then she would go silent for a few seconds before changing the subject to how clever my older brother was as a child, how pretty my older sister was. Eventually, even the relatives stopped mentioning it. Everyone accepted it as natural. Taking care of mother was Xiaohe's job. I didn't care about any of that. The me of my past life truly didn't care. I thought that being a child meant caring for parents was one's duty, no need for praise or recognition. I always thought mother knew in her heart who treated her well. She just didn't say it out loud. I was wrong. Horribly wrong. 1 month before she died in my past life, she had my brother invite a notary to the house. I thought she was going to leave the old house to me. After all, I had lived there for 30 years and taken care of her for half her life. I wasn't expecting it. But if she did, I would have felt that all those years of sacrifice had been worth it. Instead, in front of the notary, she gave the old house and all her savings to my older brother and sister, equally divided. Every penny, every brick. And what she gave me was an accusation. This child, Xiaohe, she says she's been taking care of me all these years. But you don't know. How did my legs become paralyzed? She pushed me. I could have recovered. But to make sure I couldn't live without her and to get my pension, she deliberately refused to treat me properly. All these years, she's kept me locked in the house, won't let me see anyone, calls me a useless old woman who won't die, starves me, beats me. She sat in her wheelchair, crying her heart out to the notary and all the relatives, speaking as if she wasn't paralyzed but a prisoner I had locked up. Her older son and daughter stood on either side, one holding her shoulder, the other holding her hand. The three of them cried together, accusing me, the unfilial daughter. No one asked me if it was true. No one said, should we hear Xiaohe's side? All the relatives pointed at me, saying they never imagined that someone who looked so honest could be so vicious behind everyone's back. I couldn't defend myself. My mouth was full of words but no one would listen. The 30 years of silent suffering flooded over me like a tidal wave. Whenever I tried to explain, I was shouted down. They said I was making excuses, that my guilt was showing, that I still refused to admit my wrongs. What was worse came later. Someone leaked a recording of the notary signing and posted it online with the title, "Daughter who cared for paralyzed mother for 30 years turns out to be an abuser." The video exploded overnight. My photos, name, and address were all doxed. My phone blew up with calls and texts full of abuse. When I went out to buy groceries, people recognized me and spat at me from behind. I didn't dare go out. I didn't dare look at my phone. I couldn't sleep, and my hair fell out in clumps. Those who attacked me had no idea that the so-called evidence my older brother and sister posted online was a photo of a bruise on mother's knee, from a time years ago when she had slipped off her wheelchair. I had cried all night over that bruise, but online, that photo became irrefutable proof that I had abused my mother and beaten a paralyzed old woman. In those final days of my past life, I don't know how I survived. Sleeping pills, cutting my wrists, in the end, jumping off a building. As I fell, the wind roared past my ears, and I thought how ridiculous my life had been. 30 years, my entire life thrown away, in exchange for nothing but infamy and a bottomless abyss. Then I woke up, back in the hospital, 30 years earlier, back where it all began. Xiaohe, Xiaohe, why aren't you answering Mama? Mama's calling you. Can't you hear? Zhou Xiaolon's voice pulled me back. She was half reclining on the hospital bed, tears still on her face, looking at me with that familiar expression of grievance and dependence. I knew that look too well from my past life. Every time she looked at me like that, my heart would ache with pity. I would feel so sorry for her, thinking she couldn't survive without me. My older brother, Su Ziyuan, stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, his brow furrowed into the shape of the Chinese character for river. He was 6 years older than me, 29 now, wearing a suit, his shoes polished to a shine. Clearly he'd rushed over from the office. His expression was impatient, his foot tapping restlessly as if he was ready to leave at any moment. My older sister, Su Yali, sat in the caregiver's chair, the very one I had been slumped in, holding a cup of hot coffee, scrolling through her phone. She was 4 years older than me, 27, working at a foreign company. She was best at putting on a show, shed a few tears at the door, hug mother and cry a little, then sit down and do whatever she pleased. Little sister, Su Ziyuan spoke, his tone the typical commanding voice of a superior addressing a subordinate. The doctor just said that mother's condition requires long-term care. My company project is under a tight deadline, and Yali has to go on a business trip. You just graduated and haven't found a job yet, so it's perfect for you to stay and take care of mother. We'll pool our money, we'll cover most of the living and medical expenses, and you just provide the labor. Su Yali added without looking up. Yes, little sister, it'll be hard on you, but once mother is better, we'll take over. Don't worry, your sister will send you 2,000 yuan every month. We won't let you work for nothing. 2,000 yuan. The me of my past life was actually quite touched hearing that. I thought that even though they couldn't do the physical work, at least they were willing to contribute money. But what happened afterward? The first month's 2,000 arrived on time. The second month was delayed by half a month. By the third month, it never came at all. When I called to ask, one said the company wasn't doing well. The other said she had just paid rent and was short on cash. Eventually, asking for money became proof that I was inconsiderate and ungrateful. And the promise of, once mother is better, we'll take over, was a lie from day one. The me of my past life knew I had been lied to, but I still gritted my teeth and carried on. I thought that since I had already taken on the responsibility, I couldn't abandon it halfway. Otherwise, what would happen to mother? That damn sense of duty had bound me to that house for 30 years. But now, I had opened my eyes again. In this life, I chose to let go. I didn't say a word. I picked up my backpack from beside the caregiver's chair, the same backpack I'd had since college. Its corners frayed and fuzzy. I unplugged my phone charger from the wall, coiled it up, and stuffed it into the bag. Then I put on the jacket that had been draped over the chair. All three of them looked at me at once. Xiao He, what are you doing? Zhou Xilan's voice carried a note of alarm. The forced weakness she had been putting on suddenly faded a little. I ignored her and kept packing. Su Ziyuan blocked my way. Little sister, why are you packing? Mother just woke up. Don't throw a tantrum. I walked around him to the bedside. Zhou Xilan tilted her face up to look at me. Her eyes shifted from alarm to pleading, her lips quivering as she said, Xiao He, don't go. Mama can't move right now. If you leave, what will Mama do? You're Mama's most devoted little daughter. Most devoted little daughter. She had used those words to manipulate me for 30 years in my past life. Every time I wanted to leave, every time I wanted to get away, she would bring out those words, and I would soften. But in reality, that most devoted little daughter became, at her deathbed, the one who abused her. The word, devoted, cut sharper than any knife, plunging me into endless suffering. I looked at her. For the first time, my heart was as calm as stagnant water. In my past life, whenever I faced her, my emotions would churn, pity, anger, grievance. But at this moment, there was nothing. Like a string stretched to its breaking point. Once it snapped, it could never be restrung. Suhi, Zhou Xiaolan called my full name. Her voice was no longer as weak as before. There was a hint of command in it. I knew her too well from my past life. She only called me that when she felt she was losing control. I didn't answer. I turned and walked toward the door of the hospital room. Suhi, stop right there. Zhou Xiaolan's voice shot up. Far too energetic for someone who had just become paralyzed. What do you think you're doing? Your mother is lying here, unable to move, and you're just going to walk away. Are you even human? My brother and sister finally snapped out of it and rushed to stop me. My brother grabbed my arm. My sister blocked the door. Their expressions had shifted from casual to tense. Little sister, don't be like this. Mother needs you the most right now. You can't just leave. Not now. Suyali's eyes kept flicking toward her phone, afraid of missing a message from her workgroup chat. That's right. If you leave, who will take care of mother? Su Ziyuan said. You're the only one in the family with nothing to do. We have jobs. We have careers. How can you bear to leave mother lying here all alone? Nothing to do. In my past life, they had always defined me like that, the one with nothing to do. No proper job. No social status. No value. So of course, I deserved to do the hardest, most exhausting work. But they never stopped to think, who was I the one with nothing to do for? I shook off Su Ziyuan's hand, shoved Suyali out of the way, and strode into the corridor. Behind me came Zhou Xiaolon's heart-wrenching wails. My daughter doesn't want me anymore. I'm paralyzed and she's abandoned me. Heaven, open your eyes, how did I raise such an ungrateful wretch? Her cries were so loud that the entire floor could hear them. Nurses peeked out from the station. Family members in the corridor turned to stare. Someone started whispering. In my past life, I had dreaded scenes like this. I was afraid of being pointed at, afraid of gossip, afraid of being called unfilial. So every time Zhou Xiaolon made a scene like this, I would give in, turn back, and obediently return to her side, continuing as her free caretaker. But when you've died once, does face really matter anymore? Let them say what they want, point where they want. This life of mine was snatched back from death. Why should I care what others think? I walked into the elevator without looking back. Just as the elevator doors closed, I heard Su Ziyuan's voice carry out of the hospital room. Let her go. If she has the guts to leave, let her not come back. I don't believe that a fresh graduate like her, with no job and no income, can last more than a few days out there. She'll come crawling back when she's starving. Suyali chimed in. Exactly. Let's see how long she can keep up this act. Once she runs out of money, she'll be back, crying and begging to take care of mother. Zhou Xiaolon's crying changed pitch too, from heart-wrenching to gritted teeth fury. Let her go. When she comes back, I'll make her kneel and admit she was wrong. The elevator began its descent. The numbers on the panel flashed from 10 to 9, 8, 7. I leaned against the elevator wall, listening to their words, and the corner of my mouth involuntarily curled up. Yes, the me of my past life would indeed have gone hungry for 2 days and then obediently returned, because I had no savings, no job, no place to live, no social resources. At 23, freshly graduated, I had sent out over 100 resumes, all of which had sunk like stones. I couldn't even scrape together the deposit to rent a room. Apart from going home to take care of my paralyzed mother, it seemed I had no other path. That was the Suhi of the past life. Starting today, that was no longer true. The elevator reached the first floor. The doors opened onto the lobby. Sunlight streamed in through the glass doors, golden and spreading across the floor. The evening sun hung at the edge of the sky, painting the whole city orange-red. I stepped out of the hospital gate and took a deep breath. The September breeze still carried the lingering warmth of summer as it brushed against my face. Outside, there were the sounds of car horns, of street vendors hawking their goods, of commuters cycling past on shared bikes, their bells ringing. All of this noise, chaotic but vivid, was the kind of everyday life I hadn't experienced in a very, very long time. I pulled out my phone and checked. WeChat balance, 326 yuan. Bank account, about 1,500 yuan. From doing freelance translation for someone last month. Total, less than 2,000 yuan. Enough. 2,000 yuan was enough to survive in this city. Not for long, just 1 week would do. Within 1 week, I was certain I could find a way to make a living. Although the me of my past life had wasted 30 years, I wasn't without skills. I had studied design in college, with grades in the top 3 of my cohort. It wasn't that I couldn't find a job after graduation, it was that every time I passed an interview and was about to start, Zhou Xiaolon would suddenly get worse, crying and throwing a fit to stop me from leaving. She said she couldn't trust anyone else to take care of her, that she was only used to me. Every job offer was blocked by her in one way or another. Over time, the opportunities dried up. My network withered. The gaps on my resume grew longer, and I truly became a useless person who couldn't find work. This life, it would be different. I turned off my phone screen, slung my backpack over my shoulder, and strode toward the nearest bus stop. First, find a day rental room in one of the urban villages, then start sending out resumes and picking up freelance work, saving enough for the first month's living expenses. The 30 years that the past life owed me, I would reclaim every last one of them in this life. There weren't many people waiting at the bus stop. I stood next to the advertising board and looked at my reflection in the illuminated glass, still that 23-year-old face. But the eyes no longer held the confusion and timidity of my past life. These were eyes that had died once, hiding a blade that had not yet been unsheathed. The bus arrived. I swiped my card, found a seat by the window, and sat down. The bus pulled away, and the scenery outside the window began to recede. The hospital building grew smaller and smaller in the glass, finally blocked from view by a row of residential buildings. My phone buzzed. A WeChat message from Suyali. Little sister, where are you? Come back right away. Mother's blood pressure is up, and the doctor said she can't get agitated. Whatever you're unhappy about, come back and we'll talk. Don't joke about mother's health. I didn't reply. A minute later, another buzz. Fine, if you're not coming back, at least leave the passbook. Mother's living expenses and medical bills are all in your hands. What are you doing taking the money? I glanced down at the inner pocket of my backpack. The passbook was indeed there, with a balance of about 30,000 yuan. That was Zhou Xiaolon's retirement savings, amassed over the years. In my past life, I had guarded it carefully, keeping track of every expense, afraid of being accused of squandering mother's money. But even so, in her will, that 30,000 yuan had become evidence of me embezzling an elderly person's assets. I took out the passbook, looked at it, then opened my mobile banking app. Using the account number from the passbook, I transferred the entire balance to Zhou Xiaolon's card, every last cent. Returned to its origin. After the transfer, I sent a screenshot to Suyali. All the money from the passbook has been transferred back to mother's card. See the screenshot for yourself. From now on, your affairs have nothing to do with me. After sending that message, I blocked Suyali on WeChat. Then I found Su Ziyuan's contact and blocked him too. Then I left the family group chat, and I added Zhou Xiaolon's phone number to my blacklist. 4 actions. Less than 30 seconds. 30 seconds to sever the chains that had bound me for 30 years in my past life. I set my phone to airplane mode, leaned back against the window, and closed my eyes. The bus swayed through the city streets, the automated announcements ringing out over and over. I was going to live again in this city, no baggage, no responsibilities, no one who could morally blackmail me. After about 40 minutes, the bus arrived in the old district south of the city. There was a stretch of urban village here that hadn't yet been demolished, old houses, cheap rent, a common landing spot for recent graduates and migrant workers. In my past life, a university classmate had lived nearby and once mentioned that a single room here cost only 300 yuan a month. I got off the bus and walked down the narrow alley. On either side were 3- or 4-story self-built houses, their walls plastered with rental ads in every color imaginable. The text crowded together in a dizzying display. A fruit vendor pushing a 3-wheeled cart passed me, his loudspeaker cycling through. Watermelon, 0.5 yuan a caddy. Sweeter than your first love. I tore down a rental ad and called the number. A middle-aged woman with a heavy accent answered, telling me there was a single room on the 3rd floor for 300 yuan a month. 1 month's rent as deposit. 1 month prepaid. Available for move-in today. I hung up and looked up at the sky at the end of the alley. The sun had completely set, leaving only a faint red glow at the horizon. One by one, the lights of the urban village flickered on, warm yellow light spilling from windows. The air filled with the smell of cooking. This was the first day of my new life. In my past life, on this day, I had chosen to stay and clean my mother's catheter. In this life, I was choosing to walk into the bustling everyday life of this urban village. And that home, lying in the hospital, that home that had sucked my blood for 30 years, starting today. It had absolutely nothing to do with me. I found the building and followed the landlord up to the 3rd floor. The room wasn't big, only about 10 square meters. A bed, a desk, a simple wardrobe. The paint on the walls was peeling in places, but the window faced south, so the lighting was good. Most importantly, it was clean, fresh sheets on the bed. No strange smells on the floor. I paid 600 yuan, and the landlord handed me the keys, adding a reminder to be quiet at night and not make too much noise. Then left. I locked the door, set my backpack on the desk, and collapsed backward onto the bed. The mattress was hard, the springs digging into my back, but lying there felt 100 times more comfortable than the bed I had slept on for 30 years in my past life. Because this bed was my choice, rented with my own money. It was the first base camp on my journey to a new life. After lying there for about 10 minutes, I sat up, turned on my phone, and exited airplane mode. WeChat was, as expected, blowing up. Messages from Suyali popped up one after another, starting with accusations, then turning to rage, and finally to threats, calling me heartless and saying I would get what I deserved. I didn't even read them all, I just deleted the chat thread. Then I opened a job app, reorganized my resume, and filtered for companies hiring for design positions. I found over a dozen and applied to each one. After that, I opened a freelance platform and searched for odd jobs I could take on that same day: supermarket promotions, flyer distribution, data entry, event staffing, anything that paid, I would do. My experience from my past life told me that in this city, as long as you were willing to think and willing to work hard, you wouldn't actually starve. I took a flyer distribution gig for the morning after next, 100 yuan for 4 hours. I also found an online job formatting a PowerPoint presentation. Do that same night. 450 yuan. That made 150. Tomorrow, I'd look for a dishwasher or server position for another 50, that would be 200. Enough to live in this rental room for over a week. I put my phone down, walked to the window, and pushed it open. The night breeze carried a slight chill, and in the distance, the city's neon lights flickered like a flowing river of stars. Standing by the small 3rd-floor window, looking out at those lights, I suddenly felt a stinging in my eyes. But it wasn't weakness, wasn't regret, wasn't even nostalgia for that so-called home. It was the relief of survival against all odds. In my past life, from age 23 to 53, I had never owned a room of my own. Zhou Xiaolan and I lived in the old house. Her hospital bed was placed in the middle of the living room, and my cot was right next to it. I had no private space. If I took a call, I had to hide in the bathroom. Even writing in a journal had to be done secretly while she slept, and I had to tear up the pages immediately after. And now, I had a 10 square meter room. It was small, simple, with peeling paint on the walls, but it was mine. From outside the window came the distant sound of square dancing music from the park. The elderly aunties and uncles dancing with enthusiasm. Someone downstairs was loudly talking on the phone, their voice mixed with bits of dialect I couldn't fully understand. From the next room came the sound of a TV, an ancient costume drama. The clash of swords intermittent. None of these sounds held crying, accusations, moral blackmail, or the complaint, "You're abandoning me." I closed my eyes, took a breath, then shut the window. Back at the desk, I opened my computer and started working on that PowerPoint formatting job. From 9 at night until 1 in the morning, 4 hours. 50 yuan earned. When I delivered the file, the client sent a thumbs up emoji and said, "Very professional formatting. I'll come back to you next time." I stared at that thumbs up for a few seconds, then smiled. Someone had once said something to me in my past life that I didn't pay attention to at the time. But now, looking back, those words were priceless. It was my internship supervisor during my senior year of college. After seeing me complete a project, he patted my shoulder and said, "Suhi, you're the most talented intern I've ever trained. Work hard, there's a place for you in this industry." Then Joshilan became paralyzed, and I didn't go to work. My supervisor called me several times, and I didn't answer a single one. I was too afraid that if I answered, I'd steal myself and go, leaving no one to care for the family. Back then, I thought I was being dutiful and filial. Looking back now, it wasn't filial piety, it was me pouring my entire life into a black hole. And black holes can never be filled. I closed my laptop, went to the shared bathroom to wash up, came back, locked the door, turned off the light, and lay down in bed. The night in the urban village wasn't quiet, but its noise was real. In the middle of the night, a couple argued. At 4 in the morning, a breakfast vendor wheeled his cart past downstairs, the clang of his walk ringing out crisp and powerful. Listening to these sounds, I slowly drifted off to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was already touching the head of the bed. I picked up my phone and glanced at the time. 8:10 a.m. I had slept through the entire night, no waking up startled, no being called in the middle of the night to turn over a paralyzed elderly person, no being woken by the sound of, "Xiao he, I need water." A full night's sleep in one stretch. I felt like a device that had been fully recharged. There were a few unread messages on my phone, all from unknown numbers. I opened them. Su Ziyuan had sent them from Zhou Xiaolon's phone. "Su-hee, you've got nerve. So you've transferred the money back. Huh, you think that means you're done with us? You think it's over just because you gave the money back? Mother needs care right now. You think you can just run away? Supporting your parents is a legal obligation. Don't think blocking a few phone numbers will let you escape." I looked at the message, the corner of my mouth curling up. Legal obligation. In my past life, when you left our paralyzed mother to me alone, no one mentioned legal obligations. When you divided up her property between her son and daughter, no one mentioned legal obligations. When I was cyberbullied and driven to jump off a building, still no one mentioned legal obligations. Now that I'm useful again, you want to talk about the law. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot of the message and saved it, then blocked that number too. The screenshot went into a dedicated folder I named Evidence. The lesson from my past life taught me that with this family, every word and every action had to be documented. Because they turned on you faster than you could turn a page, they could paint white as black and black as white. Without evidence, you could tear yourself apart in front of them, and they still wouldn't admit the truth. After getting up, I splashed my face with cold water and looked at the girl in the mirror, the one whose eyes were still slightly red, and said one sentence. "Su-hee, from today onward, you are only responsible for yourself." On my third day living in the urban village, I found a job. It wasn't any glamorous design position, it was at a small advertising agency, working as a graphic designer and front desk receptionist. The boss's surname was Fong. She was a woman in her early 40s, with short hair and a rapid-fire way of speaking. She glanced at my resume, then at me, and said, "I've looked at your design portfolio, solid skills. But what's this gap on your resume? You graduated 3 months ago, and there's no work experience." I said there had been some family matters that got in the way. She didn't press further. She tapped the desk twice and said, 3-month probation. Base salary 3,500. After probation, 4,500 plus commission. Do you want it? 3,500. In my past life, I had turned down an 8,000 yuan job offer to take care of Zhou Xiaolon. Now, 3,500 felt like a fortune to me, because it was my own money. I didn't have to give it to anyone, didn't have to pay anyone's medical bills. Every cent would be spent on myself. "I'll take it," I said. I started that same afternoon. The company was on the second floor of a commercial street, not big, only 12 workstations, but tastefully decorated. Fong assigned me the spot by the window and pointed at the computer. "Today, familiarize yourself with the company's business and past projects. Tomorrow, you'll start taking on work." I sat in that office chair and spun around once, looking at the traffic outside the window. An indescribable feeling rose in my heart. In my past life, I had dreamed of having a workspace of my own, a swivel chair, a computer I didn't have to share with anyone. These were ordinary things for any 23-year-old. But to me, They felt like something stolen from someone else's life. On my third day at work, I got my first real design assignment. A newly opened hot pot restaurant needed a complete set of menus and promotional posters. I pulled an all-nighter and produced 3 versions of the proposal. When I turned them in the next day, the client's feedback was unexpectedly positive. They approved the final draft on the spot. At the team meeting, Fong praised me publicly, saying, "The new girl works efficiently and has good ideas. Everyone should learn from her." I sat at my desk and listened, my face calm, but my hands were clenched into fists under the desk, not from nervousness, but because I wanted to cry. So I really was useful. So I really could stand on my own outside that home. So all those years, the words Zhou Xiaolan and my siblings had drilled into me. You can't do it. You can't live without your family. You won't make it out there. Were all lies. Ropes used to tie me down. But that home hadn't stopped functioning just because I left. On my 5th day at work, I was working overtime on a poster revision when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then answered. On the other end was a familiar voice, my uncle. "Xiao He, where are you? Do you know your mother has been discharged from the hospital?" My uncle's tone was harsh, clearly calling me to account. "Your brother and sister both have jobs. And your mother is at home alone with no one to care for her. What's going on?" I tucked the phone between my ear and shoulder, my hand still moving the mouse to adjust color swatches. "Uncle, my mother has 3 children. There was a pause on the other end. My older brother was 29. My older sister 27, both able-bodied adults with income. My voice was as flat as if I were reading a grocery list. I'm 23 and just found a job. Supporting our parents isn't solely my responsibility. Since you're so concerned about my mother, why not ask my brother and sister how they plan to share the duties?" My uncle was clearly not expecting this response. He was silent for a few seconds, then lowered his voice slightly, though his tone became more didactic. "Xiao He, that's not the right way to talk. You're your mother's most devoted daughter. She's always doted on you most. Now that she's paralyzed, you can't hold grudges over small things from the past." "Uncle," I interrupted him, "you must have heard how my mother has been talking about me to everyone, right?" He was silent again. The first thing Zhou Xiaolan had done after being discharged was to paint me, through every relative's mouth, as an unfilial wretch. In her version, she had worked so hard to put me through college, but the moment she became paralyzed, I turned my back on her and abandoned her in the hospital without a second thought. She completely omitted the fact that my brother and sister had also been there, or that I had transferred the 30,000 yuan back to her untouched. In my uncle's silence, I hung up. Before I could put my phone down, it rang again. This time it was my aunt. I didn't answer. Then came my cousin, my other aunt. Zhou Xiaolan had mobilized every relative she could, casting her net wide and having them call me. Everyone said roughly the same thing. "Your mother has had it hard. Your mother dotes on you most. You can't be so heartless." I put my phone on silent and continued working overtime. When I returned to my rental room at 10 o'clock that night, I checked my phone. 17 missed calls, 38 WeChat messages. I scrolled through them one by one and noticed something interesting. Not a single person among all those urging me to go back and care for my mother said, "Let me help you out for a few days." They were willing to spend an hour on the phone trying to convince me to go back and be the free caregiver, but not one of them was willing to give even an afternoon of their own time. So this was family. This was one family. In my past life, I hadn't understood this. I thought family members didn't keep score, didn't count costs. That blood was thicker than water and carved into our bones. Now I understood. Family affection only counts when it goes both ways. When it becomes one-sided, taking and draining, it's no longer family affection, it's parasitism. I didn't reply to anyone. I just opened my computer and continued the work I hadn't finished earlier. When that was done, I picked up another freelance job, product page design for an online shop. 80 yuan per page. I worked until 1 a.m., completed 3 pages, and earned 240 yuan. Rubbing my sore eyes, looking at the growing number in my Alipay balance, I suddenly felt more grounded than I ever had from any relative's concern. Money doesn't lie, earn one. You have one. Save 100. You have 100. It won't turn around and bite you after 30 years of sacrifice. It won't throw dirty water on you when you're exhausted. Meanwhile, the situation at the old house was quietly changing. How did I know? Because although I had blocked the numbers of the immediate family, I hadn't blocked all my relatives. My cousin Zhou Ting, my aunt's daughter, and I had a decent relationship. In my past life, when everyone was attacking me, at least she hadn't joined in. She would send me messages from time to time, not too often, but packed with information. Sis, your mother was badmouthing you in the family group chat today, saying you're heartless. Sis, your brother took your mother back to the old house and left, saying the company is busy, hasn't been back for 3 days. Sis, your sister actually came back today, but only stayed an hour before leaving, saying something came up at her mother-in-law's. Sis, Uncle went to see your mother today, and she cried pitifully in front of him, complaining that her legs hurt and no one cares about her. I scrolled through Zhou Ting's messages, one by one, and realized I felt nothing. In my past life, even knowing Zhou Xiaolan was acting, seeing these messages would have made me feel bad, because I would think, she is my mother. After all, she is paralyzed. After all, she's lying alone in the old house. After all. But now, I just found it laughable. She's paralyzed. In my past life, she was paralyzed for 30 years, I cared for her for 30 years, and in the end, she pointed at my nose and said I caused her paralysis. Since I'm a murderer in her eyes, wouldn't staying far away from her in this life be exactly what she wanted? I replied to Zhou Ting with one message. Got it. No need to forward every single thing. And stay out of it yourself. Don't let them drag you in. Zhou Ting replied with an emoji. A few minutes later, she sent another. Sis, I think you did the right thing. The way your mother treated you before, we all saw it. No one just dared to say anything. I stared at that sentence for a long time. We all saw it. No one just dared to say anything. In my past life, if someone, even one person, had spoken up for me when my mother was throwing dirty water on me, I might not have ended up jumping off that building. But no one did. Everyone was silent. Everyone watched. Some even joined in the attack, as if by attacking me, they could prove how filial they were. I turned my phone over on the desk and went back to work. In my second week at the company, a turning point came. Fong had landed a big project. A chain milk tea brand needed a complete visual package for their autumn new product launch. From packaging design to in-store posters to online promotional graphics. The budget was substantial. The timeline tight. The senior designers were all already swamped with their own work. At the team meeting, Fong scanned the room, and her gaze finally landed on me. Xiao Su, do you dare to take on this project? Everyone's eyes turned to me, a new hire on probation. Only 2 weeks into the job, about to be handed a complete brand visual project. Some were waiting to see me fail. Others were nervous on my behalf. I dare, I said. Fong smiled and placed the thick stack of requirements on my desk. For the next 10 odd days, I practically lived at the company. During the day, I did routine design tasks. At night, I worked overtime on the milk tea brand project. From color palettes to fonts to layouts, I refined every detail over and over. When I got tired, I would rest my head on my desk for a while. When I got hungry, I'd make instant noodles. Sometimes, when Fong left after working late and saw I was still there, she wouldn't say anything, just leave a yogurt or a bread roll on my desk before she left. The years of caring for Zhou Xiaolan in my past life had taught me one skill: working long, intense hours without complaining. Changing a diaper and revising a design aren't fundamentally different, both require patience and attention to detail. The only difference is that the former's recipient is never satisfied, while the latter's recipient gives feedback, revision suggestions, and finally, payment. The day I submitted the proposal, I had lost 4 pounds, and my dark circles were so deep that 2 layers of concealer couldn't hide them. But the client approved it. Not only approved, the brand manager on the client's side wrote 4 words in the email: exceeded expectations. After reading the email in her office, Fong put down her phone, looked at me, and said in a very serious tone, Xiao Su, probation period, shortened by 2 months. That night, I went to eat malatang by myself. I added beef, shrimp paste, and all the extras I usually couldn't justify buying, 68 yuan for the meal. After finishing, I walked slowly down the commercial street toward home. Passing a clothing store, I saw a mustard yellow trench coat on a mannequin in the window, the color of autumn sunlight. Absolutely beautiful. I stood in front of the window for a long time, then pushed open the door and tried it on. 799 yuan. The me of my past life couldn't have imagined spending 799 yuan on a piece of clothing for myself. Back then, all my money went to Zhou Xiaolon, good quality diapers, imported supplements to prevent bed sores, new wheelchair when the old one broke. I wore the same down jacket for 8 years, patching the frayed cuffs with tape to keep wearing it. One winter it was especially cold, and I wanted to buy a 200 yuan cotton coat. I hesitated for an entire month and still couldn't bring myself to do it. Now I understood. If you don't love yourself, no one else will love you. If you treat yourself like a consumable, others will treat you like one too. I took out my phone, scanned the code, and paid. Wearing the mustard yellow trench coat, I walked out of the store. The September evening breeze blew past, and the hem of the coat fluttered lightly. I felt like a bird that had just escaped its cage, still not quite used to its wings. But the air was free. When I got back to my rental room, it was already 9:30 p.m. I showered, changed into my pajamas, and was about to go to bed when Zhou Ting's message came. Sis, did your mother go out today? My hand, which had been drying my hair, stopped. Go out? How could she go out? I replied. Zhou Ting sent a voice message, her voice lowered, clearly hiding in some corner to talk. Auntie went to the old house to see your mother today. When she got there, the door was locked. She knocked for ages and no one answered. Then the neighbor, Aunt Wang, said she saw your mother being pushed out in her wheelchair by your sister. Seems like they went to the community hospital. No idea what they went for. But Auntie said your mother has been looking pretty energetic lately. Not like a paralyzed patient. She can sit up on her own and even eat with a bowl in her hands. It's just that her legs can't move. I looked at the message, my mind racing. In my past life, Zhou Xiaolon's paralysis had been real, spinal cord injury from a cerebral hemorrhage, loss of motor function in both lower limbs. That couldn't be faked. But in my past life, her condition had been more flexible than typical paraplegia. Sometimes she could move her legs a little. Sometimes she could push herself from the bed to the wheelchair. The doctor had said there was partial preservation of nerve function, not complete paraplegia. In my past life, I had been grateful for that partial preservation because it meant there was hope for rehabilitation. I had taken her to countless rehab sessions. Every time, she said it hurt. She was tired. She didn't want to do it anymore. When I urged her to persist, she would accuse me of trying to kill her. Eventually, the rehab stopped. Her muscles slowly atrophied, and even the preserved function gradually deteriorated until, finally, she became completely dependent. But now, early in the timeline, her legs should still retain some mobility. Anything else? I asked Zhou Ting. Yes. Today, your sister posted in the family group chat asking if everyone could take turns coming to the old house to look after your mother, 1 week per person. I almost laughed out loud. 1 week per person. In my past life, I had been the sole caregiver for 30 years, and now they wanted to split the duty among relatives in weekly shifts, acting as if it were a huge favor. But I didn't laugh, because I knew no one would agree, who didn't have their own affairs to handle. Who wanted to wipe and bathe a paralyzed elderly person. It was easy to say nice things, but when it came down to it, they'd all scatter. Did anyone agree? No. Zhou Ting replied quickly. Third uncle said his back is bad. Big aunt said she has to look after her grandson. Second aunt said she's not in good health either. Lots of excuses. No one agreed. I set down my towel, leaned against the headboard, and stared at the long crack in the ceiling. See. This is human nature. Everyone knew that without me, this household couldn't function. Everyone wanted me to go back and be the patsy again, but not one of them was willing to share even a small part of that patsy's burden. They wanted my sacrifice. not shared responsibility. Sis. One more thing. Zhou Ting sent another message. Your mother tagged everyone in the group today and said that if Xiao He doesn't come back to take care of her, she'll take all three of you to court. Because the law says children have a duty to support their parents. Take all three of us to court. Not just me, all three of us. Zhou Xiaolan had finally said something fair, even if it was in the context of a threat. But that didn't matter. The important part was, Su away. I put my phone on the nightstand, turned over, and got ready to sleep. Legally, children do have a duty to support their parents, but the law has never said that duty falls on only one child. In my past life, my brother and sister had hidden behind me, feeling entitled to shirk their responsibilities, because there was a fool charging ahead to take the hit for them. Now that the fool had stopped, every single one of them was implicated. If Zhou Xiaolan really filed a lawsuit, the law would require all three children to share the duty. Those with means would pay. Those with ability would provide care. My brother made over 300,000 a year, and my sister's monthly salary wasn't low. The court wouldn't put the burden on me. As for them trying to continue shirking, no more. I closed my eyes, my heart calmer than I could have imagined. In my past life, whenever I thought about these family matters, I would get anxious, angry, aggrieved, all my emotions tangled together like a messy, impossible knot. But now, after completely cutting my life off from theirs, looking back at all that chaos was like watching someone else's story through a pane of glass. What did it have to do with me? I had my own job, my own rental room, my recently confirmed salary plus commission, and a new 799 yuan trench coat. My life had just begun. Why should I press pause for someone who wasn't worth it? The next day was Saturday. No work. I slept until I naturally woke up, then went to the nearby market to buy groceries. I borrowed the landlord's kitchen to cook 2 dishes, tomato scrambled eggs and shredded pork with green peppers, paired with a bowl of white rice. I sat by the window of my rental room, eating slowly, the sunlight streaming in and stretching the shadow of the soy sauce bottle across the table. While eating, I opened my phone and scrolled through WeChat moments. Su Yali had posted last night, a selfie in a new dress, glowing with a radiant smile. The caption reading, "No matter how hard life is, keep smiling, fighting." Below, several relatives had liked the post, and someone commented, "Yali is so strong." I looked at that post, chewing my green peppers loudly. So strong, with your mother paralyzed at home and your sister having quit. Now you have to step up. You really do need to be strong. But judging by the background, she was at some trendy restaurant, soft lighting, 2 cocktails on the table, clearly not alone. Life may be hard, but that doesn't stop you from going out for a drink. Good for her. I scrolled through some shopping feeds and bought a tube of concealer and a box of face masks. As I confirmed the purchase, I felt a reflexive tightness in my chest at the price, but I forced myself to tap pay. In my past life, I had lived like a tool, even hesitating for ages before applying some face cream. In this life, I was going to learn to be good to myself, even if it started with a box of masks that cost only a few dozen yuan. And so, a week passed peacefully. Work, off work, overtime, freelance, saving money. Occasionally, Zhou Ting would send a few messages updating me on the latest at the old house. Things were getting worse, for them. My brother, Su Ziyuan, had been sent on a business trip by his company, gone for half a month. Before leaving, he installed a surveillance camera at the old house, claiming it was so he could monitor his mother's condition at any time. But in reality, even if he saw Zhou Xiaolan fall or need help from the camera, he was thousands of miles away and couldn't do anything except call his sister to come over. My sister, Su Yali, had been visiting every few days at first, but later she stopped going as often. Her excuse was that work was busy, but Zhou Ting told me that Su Yali had posted vacation photos on her moments, with her location set to a resort in a neighboring city. Zhou Xiaolan was left alone in the old house. Her legs couldn't move, but her upper body could function somewhat. She could sit up in bed, reach things on the nightstand, drink water on her own, and eat food left within reach. But anything more than a meter from her bed, she was helpless. No one cooked for her, helped her change clothes, bathed her, or took her outside for sunlight. Before his trip, Suzy Yuan had left her a carton of instant noodles and a few large bottles of mineral water by the bed, but instant noodles still needed to be prepared, and hot water still needed to be boiled. I didn't know how Zhou Xiaolan was handling these problems, and I didn't want to know. I only knew that in my past life, I had once collapsed from exhaustion by her bedside, and my first thought upon waking wasn't for myself, but to check if her catheter was blocked. At the time, my blood pressure had dropped to 60, and the doctor warned that if I continued pushing myself like that, I could die of sudden heart failure. Zhou Xiaolan had no reaction, she just asked me what I was making for breakfast the next day. Now, it was her turn to experience what it was like to be truly alone. One Saturday at noon, I was sitting in my rental room working on a freelance assignment when my phone suddenly rang. An unfamiliar number, a local landline. I hesitated, then answered. Hello, am I speaking with a Miss Suhi? A businesslike voice came through. This is the Changnan police station. Your mother, Zhou Xiaolan, has reached out to us through the community, saying she has no one to take care of her and cannot manage her daily needs. We have contacted her two other children, one is out of town, and the other did not answer her phone. We are reaching out to you to understand the situation. The police station. Zhou Xiaolan called the police. I put down my pen, shifted my posture, and kept my voice steady. Officer, my mother has 3 children. I am the youngest. Have you contacted her older son and daughter? Yes. The son said he's away on a business trip and can't come back right now. The daughter's call went unanswered 3 times. So you contacted me. There was a pause on the other end. Officer, I am not shirking my responsibility. I spoke slowly, enunciating every word clearly. I want to state clearly, I am willing to fulfill my legally mandated duty to support my parent, whatever amount the court decides I must pay. I will pay without delay. But caring for an elderly parent is not solely my responsibility. I refuse to be treated as the only option. If you believe a meeting is necessary, please coordinate with all 3 children together. Additionally, when my mother was discharged from the hospital a month ago, I transferred all of her savings back to her personal account. I have the bank transfer records to prove it. I have not abandoned her, nor have I misappropriated any of her assets. When I finished speaking, the other end of the line was silent for a full 5 seconds. The officer clearly hadn't expected a 23-year-old young woman to speak so flawlessly and unassailably. After a moment of silence, his tone was noticeably gentler than before. I understand your situation. Here's what we'll do. We'll arrange for a social worker to visit your mother and assess her condition. As for the matter among you 3 siblings, I suggest you sit down and discuss it as soon as possible. After all, the elderly woman's health. Officer, let me add one more piece of information. I interrupted him. My mother's medical records at the time of admission clearly state that her paralysis is not complete. There is partial preservation of neurological function and potential for rehabilitation. However, she herself has long refused rehabilitation training. If you have a social worker intervening, I suggest simultaneously evaluating her rehabilitation needs and actual physical condition. Another silence. All right. I've noted that down. Thank you for your cooperation. Ms. Su. The call ended. I set my phone on the table and realized my palms were drenched in sweat. Not from nervousness, but from years of pent-up anger finally finding a proper outlet. In my past life, when I was being cyberbullied, no one spoke up for me. No institution was willing to hear my side of the story. Everyone believed the tears of a paralyzed old woman. No one believed a taciturn daughter who had cared for her mother for 30 years. Now, none of that had happened yet. I still had the chance to put everything on the table, to speak with evidence, to speak with the law. I got up and washed my face. Looking in the mirror at my slightly flushed cheeks, I'd lost a little weight. But my complexion was much better than the day I'd left the hospital. The redness was gone from my eyes. The corners of my mouth no longer drooped. I looked as if I had shed a heavy shell. My phone buzzed again. Zhou Ting sent a screenshot of a message from Zhou Xiaolan in the family group chat. There was no text, just a voice-to-text transcription of what was likely Zhou Xiaolan dictating to her daughter to post. I raised an ungrateful wretch. That one named Xiaohe. Her own mother is paralyzed in bed, and she couldn't care less. I called the police, but they say she's not breaking the law. Heaven, open your eyes, why don't you strike down this unfilial creature? Below it were replies from relatives. A string of hugs. Auntie, don't be sad. Take care of your health. And a long message from my uncle. Xiaolan, don't get angry, it's not worth ruining your health over. Xiaohe was spoiled rotten by you as a child, and now that her wings are stiff, she won't acknowledge her mother. Don't worry, if she doesn't come back, we elders will go talk to her. If she still won't listen, she won't be considered part of this family anymore. I looked at those words and slowly typed back to Zhouting. Take a screenshot for me, especially my uncle's line. She won't be considered part of this family anymore. Take a clear, complete screenshot. Zhouting replied quickly. I put down my phone and sat at the edge of my bed for a while. Then, I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not a cold laugh, but a genuinely relaxed, relieved laugh. They wanted to cut ties with me. That was wonderful. Not one of those people had spoken a single word for me when I was being cyberbullied in my past life. Now they said, she won't be considered part of this family anymore. That wasn't punishment. That was a gift to me. I couldn't have asked for more. That night, I treated myself to a good meal, not malatang, but a proper Japanese restaurant. I sat alone in a booth and ordered a serving of salmon sashimi, grilled eel, tempura, and a small bottle of sake. The waiter glanced at me when serving, probably thinking it was odd for a young woman to eat alone at a Japanese place. I ignored her gaze and finished every dish. Carefully. The salmon was fresh, melting in my mouth. The tempura was crispy, burning my mouth as I dipped it in soy sauce and grated daikon. The sake was warm, sipped slowly, warming me from throat to stomach. As I ate, I suddenly remembered something. On this same day in my past life, Zhou Xiaolan's first weekend after being discharged, she had thrown a huge fit at home. She threw her bowl of congee on the floor because it wasn't hot enough, and the scalding grains splattered onto my feet, leaving several blisters. As I crouched on the floor cleaning up the broken bowl, I cried, not from the pain, but from the unfairness. She, however, just sneered from the bed and said, if you have the guts, leave and don't come back. I didn't leave, because I had nowhere to go and no courage to leave. In hindsight, I didn't even have 50 yuan in my pocket back then. Even my phone bill was paid by my brother. How could I possibly have left? I couldn't. And today, I was sitting in a Japanese restaurant, eating fresh salmon sashimi and drinking warm sake, looking out at the neon-lit city nightscape. The city really was beautiful at night. In my past life, I had never known. When the meal was finished and I paid 230 yuan, as I scanned the code with my phone, I didn't hesitate for a moment. Stepping out of the restaurant, the streets were still crowded at around 9 o'clock. Wearing my mustard yellow trench coat, I strolled slowly toward the subway station. A bubble tea shop by the roadside had a long line. A group of young girls chattering about which flavor was best. A boy walked past, holding a girl's hand. She was holding a candied hawthorn skewer, smiling sweetly. This was life, simple, ordinary, unremarkable life. But to me, this was already a happiness I hadn't dared to dream of in my past life. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, a bank alert. My salary had been deposited. 4,800 yuan, my first full paycheck after probation, plus the commission from the milk tea project. I stood at the bustling subway entrance, staring at that number for a long time. 4,800 yuan wasn't a lot, not really. In this city, that amount wouldn't even cover a month's rent. But it was money I had earned myself, with my own hands, penny by penny. It wasn't dependent on anyone. It didn't require me to please anyone. I didn't have to kneel and beg in front of anyone. I put my phone back in my pocket, took a deep breath, and walked into the subway station. As the train pulled in, it swept up a gust of wind that blew the loose strands of hair across my forehead. I stood on the platform, looking at my reflection in the train window, mustard yellow trench coat, straight back, resolute eyes, a world apart from the dejected little girl who had fallen asleep slumped on a caregiver's chair in a hospital room just 1 month ago. And the mess at the old house was just beginning to ferment. I knew Zhou Xiaolan too well, how fragile her facade was. A patient with no one to wait on them would eventually slip up. When that happened, I would make her drink back, drop by drop, all the dirty water she had thrown on me in my past life. The cracks started showing at the end of October. On a weekend, I was resting, organizing my wardrobe in the rental room. The weather was turning cold, so I folded up my summer clothes and tucked them into storage bags. I took out the autumn clothes I'd bought at the wholesale market the previous weekend and hung them up. My mustard yellow trench coat hung in the most prominent spot. Every time I opened the door and saw it, my mood lifted. My phone rang. It was Zhou Ting. Zhou Ting rarely called me, she usually texted. She said calling was too direct, too easily overheard. So when I saw her name on the caller ID, I knew something big had happened. Sis, can you talk right now? Her voice was lowered, the background noise suggesting she was outside. Yes. Go ahead. I went to the old house today to drop something off for your mother, and I saw something really strange. Zhou Ting paused, as if checking that no one was around. Your mother wasn't home. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open and called out, no answer. I thought something had happened, so I ran to the bedroom, no one in bed. She'd gone out. Let me finish. Zhou Ting's voice dropped even lower. With a tremor she herself seemed not to believe. I was about to call some relatives to ask, but when I passed by the living room window and looked out into the yard, there was a wet towel and a piece of freshly washed laundry hanging on your clothesline. That clothesline is so high, someone in a wheelchair couldn't possibly reach it. My grip on the phone tightened. Are you sure she hung it herself? I don't know who hung it, but your brother is away on business. Your sister hasn't been back for 3 days, your mother is the only one home. Zhou Ting took a breath. And the clothes were still dripping, meaning they'd just been washed. If someone else were helping, they wouldn't have washed clothes and left without saying a word. The information flew through my mind. Zhou Xiaolan's legs were immobile, that much had been diagnosed. But if she could sit up in bed and transfer to her wheelchair with her arms, given her current physical condition, it might be possible. But transferring from wheelchair to the clothesline, then standing up to hang clothes, that would require her legs to support at least some of her body weight. Anything else? I kept my voice calm. Yes. I went back about 40 minutes later. She was already back, sitting in her wheelchair, saying she'd been sleeping and hadn't heard me knock. But her hair was wet, and her body smelled like body wash. Zhou Ting's voice, which had been hushed, now rose to a normal volume, as if she'd finally mustered the courage to say what she'd been holding back. Sis, I think your mother's paralysis isn't as severe as she says, or maybe she's not actually paralyzed at all. When she was talking to me, she had a blanket over her lap, covering her feet completely. Did she always do that at home? In the past, in my past life, Zhou Xiaolan had always liked to cover her legs with a blanket, winter or summer. That blanket was always there. I had thought it was because she got cold easily. And that long-term immobility did indeed lead to poor circulation. But now thinking back, what was that blanket covering? A leg that was inconvenient to show, or a secret that couldn't be seen? Thank you for telling me this, I said. Don't go to the old house too often from now on. Don't get yourself involved. Let them handle their own affairs. But sis, listen. Shouting. I spoke in a gentle but irrefutable tone. Keep what you've seen in your mind. But don't say anything about it yet. I have my own plans. I hung up and sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. The autumn afternoon sunlight slanted in, dividing the floor into light and shadow. I sat in the lighter half. But inside, I was churning with the coldness of 30 years of accumulated suspicion from my past life. Many details from my past life now seemed suspicious in hindsight. Every time she wanted me to feel sorry for her, she'd say her legs hurt terribly. And I'd stay up all night massaging them. Every time I wanted to go to a job interview or a date, her legs would suddenly worsen, and she'd writhe in bed in pain. Every time relatives came to visit, she'd lie in bed needing my help just to turn over, but as soon as they left, she could push herself up to sit, eat from a bowl. her hand steady enough not to spill a drop of soup. Once, her leg had fallen asleep from being in one position too long, and I used a hot towel on it. She kicked me. The force of that kick, now I thought about it, was not something a completely paralyzed person could muster. In my past life, I had suspected, but every time I suppressed those suspicions, because the very act of suspecting my paralyzed mother of faking made me feel despicable. I thought I shouldn't think that way about my own mother. I thought it was just the negative emotions that came from the exhaustion of caregiving. I even felt ashamed for having such thoughts. But now it seemed the person who should be ashamed wasn't me. I picked up my phone, opened my chat with Zhou, and typed out a message, shouting, "Next time you go to the old house, if you can do it without drawing attention, try to record a video for me. Don't point it directly at anyone. Say you're filming the flowers in the yard or a cat. Just casually." Zhou replied with a single word, "Okay." Then another, "Sis, what are you going to do?" "Nothing. Just keeping a record." Keeping a record. In my past life, if I'd had this kind of evidence, I wouldn't have been crushed. In this life, I've gotten smarter. Every word, every image, every record is kept. Because I know how vicious this family can be when they turn on you. And the only way to deal with people like that is to weld the truth onto evidence so solidly that they can't overturn it even if they try. Over the next half-month, Zhou sent me intermittent updates. "Sis, your mother went to the community hospital today. She wheeled herself there. Aunt Wang said she saw her using her hands to push the wheelchair along the road. Her arms looked strong. Sis, today someone from the community came to do a home visit. Your mother lay completely still in bed. But as soon as they left, she sat up and started watching TV. Sis, the surveillance camera your brother installed suddenly broke yesterday. Guess who broke it?" Each message was like a puzzle piece, slowly forming a complete picture. But I didn't act rashly. I knew the time wasn't right yet. The things Zhou had caught were too fragmentary to constitute a complete chain of evidence. I needed something more definitive, irrefutable proof that would stop her from ever turning the tables. On a Tuesday in November, I got my chance. That afternoon, I had taken half a day off to handle some paperwork at the Social Security Center. On my way back, I happened to pass by the community hospital. I hadn't planned on going in, but the figure I saw through the glass door made me stop in my tracks. Zhou Xiaolan. She was sitting in her wheelchair in the waiting area, her signature blanket over her lap. She was alone. She was chatting with an elderly woman next to her, animated expression, gesturing, looking like she was in good spirits. I stood behind a pillar outside the door. From this angle, she couldn't see me, but I could see her clearly. About 10 minutes later, the nurse called her number. Zhou Xiaolan responded, then did something. She lifted the blanket off her lap and placed it on the chair beside her. Then she stood up. Not the kind of standing that involved propping herself up on something, but a true, alternating weight between legs, rising from the wheelchair standing. After she stood, she even bent down to straighten the pants leg that had been crumpled under the blanket. That range of motion was absolutely impossible for someone with complete lower body paralysis. My pupils constricted sharply in that instant. 30 years of doubt. 30 years of self-questioning. 30 years of despicable thoughts I had suppressed. In the moment Zhou Xiaolan stood up, they all materialized. She stood there, her two legs supporting her body steadily, and walked step by step toward the examination room. The pace was slow, with a slight drag, but that was a person who could walk. She could walk. I reached into my pocket, found my phone, unlocked it, opened the camera, switched to video mode, and aimed a smooth, continuous motion, without a second's hesitation. In the frame, Zhou Xiaolan walked into the examination room and came out about 5 minutes later, holding a prescription, and walked back to her wheelchair. Once seated, she looked left and right, confirmed no one was watching, and only then did she place the blanket back over her legs, resuming her paralyzed elderly person appearance. I saved the video, exited the camera, and gripped the phone tightly in my hand, my knuckles white from the pressure. At that moment, what surged through me wasn't anger, it was a sadness deeper than anger. In my past life, for this woman, I had worked myself to the point of fainting, to the point of my periods stopping, to the point of looking like a 60-year-old woman when I was 45. She wasn't unaware, she saw it all. But she chose to keep performing. Because she needed my sacrifice to maintain her comfortable life. Needed my blood to support the son and daughter she truly loved. Once she no longer needed to pretend. The paralyzed mother could walk as freely as anyone. So why, in my past life, had I thrown away my entire life? I didn't go in to confront her. I didn't make a scene on the spot. I just put away my phone and left the community hospital. As I walked out, a light rain began to fall. November's rain isn't heavy, but it's cold, bone-deep cold. I didn't have an umbrella. I walked in the rain to the bus stop and stood under the shelter, watching the flow of traffic in a daze. My phone rang. It was Fong. Xiao Su. Is your half-day off enough? The company just got a rush order. The client needs it urgently. If you can come back, I'll be right there. I interrupted her, my voice steady. 20 minutes to the office. I needed work right now, needed something tangible to fill my mind, to keep from being drowned by the surging emotions. In my past life, when something like this happened, I would hide away and cry, then go home and continue taking care of her, pretending nothing had happened. In this life, I wouldn't cry. What good was crying? Hadn't I cried enough in my past life? After crying my eyes out, I still had to bring her water to wash her feet. Back at the office, I sat at my workstation, turned on my computer, and started working on the rush order. 2 hours passed quickly. My focus total. When I submitted the work, it was already dark outside. The office lights were glaring. My colleagues had gradually left, until only Fong and I remained. Fong came out of her office and saw that I was still at my desk. Slightly surprised, she said, "Still here? Come on, pack up and go home." She stood in the doorway and looked at me for a few seconds, then walked over and pulled a small box of cake from her bag, placing it on my desk. Individually wrapped cheesecake, with Japanese text on the box, looked expensive. A friend brought these back from Japan. I can't finish them alone. Take them home as a late-night snack. Her tone was casual, but the way she set down the cake was firm, not to be refused. Thank you, Fong. Don't mention it. Get off work early. Don't stay too late. She turned to leave, took 2 steps, then added, "Oh, by the way, I mentioned it to the boss, you're getting a raise next month. I'll tell you the exact amount once the process is done." The sound of her heels gradually faded down the hallway. I sat in the empty office, looking at the cheesecake on my desk, and suddenly felt a sting in my nose. This time, I really wanted to cry, not from sadness, but from a strange feeling, like you've been walking through a frozen wasteland for a very long time, and suddenly someone hands you a cup of hot water. The water is ordinary, the temperature just average, but because you've been so cold for so long, that one sip of warm water warms you to your core. In my past life, no one had ever handed me hot water. Everyone thought it was only right that I cared for my mother, that my labor was deserved. My sacrifice was deserved. Since childhood, Zhou Xiaolon had taught me, you are the younger sister. You must give in to your older brother and sister. You are a daughter. You must help your mother with the housework. You have no talent, no prospects. Staying at home to take care of me is your only use. Hearing that for decades gave me calluses on my ears thicker than the ones on my feet. But now, someone was telling me, you do good work. I'm giving you a raise. You work hard. Here's some cake. So this was what real recognition felt like, not tearful gratitude, not earth-shattering rewards, just one sentence. 1 box of cake. That was enough. I put the cake in my bag, turned off my computer, locked the office door, and went downstairs. The rain had stopped. The ground was wet, and the streetlights reflected off the puddles. I stepped around the puddles and walked step by step back to my rental room. On the way, I passed an old man selling roasted sweet potatoes. On his tricycle hung a small yellow light bulb, casting its orange light over the neatly arranged potatoes. I bought the biggest, roundest one. It was too hot to hold, and I passed it from hand to hand. I stopped on the side of the road, peeled it open, and took a bite. The heat made me hiss. But it was sweet, so sweet. That's how it is with people, after enduring hardship. A little bit of sweetness can make you feel like living is still worthwhile. Back in my rental room, I imported the video I'd filmed into my computer and made 3 backups, one in the cloud, one on an external hard drive, and one on my phone. I also took screenshots of key frames from the video and put them in the same folder as Zhou Ting's earlier screenshots. I renamed the folder Evidence. After doing all that, I showered, lay down in bed, and stared at the ceiling, thinking about one thing. In my past life, my mother's will had been made 1 month before her death. According to the timeline of my past life, that should be nearly 30 years from now. But in this life, the trajectory had already completely diverged. I was no longer the hardworking Patsy. And her paralysis might be exposed earlier. Would she transfer her assets in advance? Once the thought appeared, it wouldn't go away. Zhou Xiaolan's most valuable asset was the old house. It was in the old downtown area, old, but in a prime location. Based on current market prices, it was worth at least 1 million or 2. On top of that, she had her pension, 4 or 5,000 yuan a month, plus whatever savings she'd accumulated over the years. A significant sum. In my past life, she had given everything to my older brother and sister. I got nothing. So in this life, given her nature and their cunning, they would absolutely prepare in advance. They wouldn't wait until she was on her deathbed to make a will. They would transfer the assets while she was still alive. That way, no matter how I tried to claim my rights in the future, I wouldn't get a penny. But I didn't care about her money. What I cared about was, if they really did that, it would give me an even bigger piece of evidence. Proof that she had planned all along to use me as free labor, to drain every last drop of my value. In my past life, her will had nailed me to a pillar of shame. In this life, I would let the truth surface. Let everyone see who the real villain in this family was. December arrived before I knew it. The weather turned bitterly cold. I swapped to a thick cotton quilt and bought a small space heater online. There was no central heating in the rental room. If I didn't use the heater at night, my nose would be freezing by morning. But this winter was different from the winters of my past life. In the old house, Zhou Xiaolan's room had air conditioning, but my cot was in the living room. In winter, I couldn't sleep even wrapped in 2 layers of blankets. She said, "The AC uses too much electricity, can't leave it on all night. Turn it on for an hour to warm up, then turn it off." But the AC in her room could stay on all the time, the reason being, a patient can't get cold. Her life was a life. Mine wasn't. Now it was different. I paid my own electric bill, and I could run the space heater as long as I wanted. Although the electricity cost more, I was slowly learning to be good to myself, even if it started with something as small as that. On a Friday night in mid-December, I had just come home from work and sat down in my rental room when my phone buzzed. Zhou Ting had sent a video, with only one word, "Sis. See for yourself." I opened the video. The footage was clearly candid, shot from a low angle, probably with Zhou Ting's phone in her bag, just the lens peeking out. The location was the living room of the old house. Zhou Xiaolan sat in her wheelchair. Su Yali stood beside her, and the two were talking. The background noise was chaotic. I turned the volume to maximum and listened 3 or 4 times before piecing together what they were saying. "Mom, when are you going to take care of the house transfer?" Su Yali's voice. Ziyuan said he's already asked around. "Get it done while housing prices are still good, don't drag it out. With that house under your name, if you wait until after you pass, there'll be inheritance procedures, a hassle. Not to mention who knows if Suhi will show up and cause trouble then." Zhou Xiaolan's voice was a bit irritable. "I know. Why are you rushing me? How am I supposed to go with my legs like this? What would people say if they saw me? A paralyzed person going to the property transaction center to transfer a house. Might as well tell the whole world I'm faking. Just say the community hospital gave you a note saying you need a follow-up at the big hospital, and you'll go there on the way." "Fine. Fine. Next Tuesday." The video ended there, about 40 seconds. I held the phone and watched it 5 times, each time confirming I hadn't misheard. Transferring the old house to her brother. Zhou Xiaolan was alive. Her legs still worked. And she was already giving away her only property to her son. without a moment's hesitation. In my past life, she had waited until her deathbed to draw her sword. Now that I was gone, they couldn't even be bothered with the pretense. A thought suddenly occurred to me. Had Zhou Xiaolan done the same in my past life? Had she, during all those years I cared for her, quietly transferred everything that could be transferred, leaving me only an empty shell, so that after her death, my brother and sister would get everything, and I would have no place to call home, on top of being branded as abusive to an elderly person? The thought made my back go cold. In my past life's will, my brother and sister split everything, I got nothing. I had always thought that was a decision made in her final moments, a momentary lapse. But seeing this video, I understood. It wasn't a momentary lapse. It was premeditated. The three of them had it all planned from the start, son and daughter living their good lives on the outside, little daughter as the free live-in servant at home. Then, when she'd been squeezed dry, kick the little daughter out. Property to the son and daughter, blame to the little daughter. There was no better deal under heaven. I made 3 copies of the video and put them in the same folder as all my previous evidence. The next morning, I sat at the small desk in my rental room, opened the browser on my phone, and searched for property prices in the old house's neighborhood. The house wasn't large, 87 square meters, but the location was excellent, with nearby subway and shopping areas. Based on recent sale prices in the same complex, the total value was around 1.3 to 1.5 million yuan. A house worth over $1 million, quietly transferred to her son, while she proclaimed to the world that she was penniless, dependent on her little daughter for survival. The little daughter exhausted herself for 30 years, ended up with nothing, and was branded a monster who abused the elderly. I also looked up the legal provisions regarding how asset transfers affect the duty of support. In cases of support disputes, if an elderly person maliciously transfers assets, the court will consider the disposition of those assets when determining the children's duty of support. That is, if Zhou Xiaolan gave the house to my brother, then he would bear the corresponding responsibility, not take the property and still expect me to cover everything. I saved each piece of information and made a complete record in my notebook. In my past life, I only knew how to bury my head in work. I didn't understand the law. I didn't know how to protect myself. In this life, I've learned, the best weapon against this family isn't tears, it's the law, evidence, and a calm, clear mind. The last week of December, the company began preparations for the annual party. Fong asked me to be responsible for the main visual design, everything from the backdrop to the invitations to the table cards. It was the biggest project I'd taken on since joining, and the first time I was independently responsible for the visual concept of a full event. I threw all my energy into the project. I worked overtime for a week straight, every night until 11 p.m. And I spent the weekends at the office too. Sometimes Fong would stay after work, sitting in her office to keep me company. Occasionally, she'd come over with a cup of water and put it on my desk without a word, just water. Then she'd go. She never said things like, "You've worked hard," but she put a cup of water on my desk every day. Never the same cup twice, sometimes plain water, sometimes lemon water, and once, surprisingly, hot cocoa. On the day of the annual party, the design's effect was surprisingly good. The client's representative took a photo in front of the backdrop and posted it on Moments, with the caption, "The most thoughtful annual party design this year." After the party ended, Fong took me out for a late-night snack. She had a couple of beers, her face flushed, and patted me on the shoulder. "Xiao Su, you know what? Hiring you was the best decision I made this year." I clinked my glass against hers, smiled, and said nothing. But there was a voice in my heart saying, "Fong, do you know, you're the most important person I've met in this lifetime. You gave me a job, not just a job, but dignity. You showed me that I'm useful, not someone else's tool, not someone else's sacrifice." I didn't say these words out loud. I wasn't used to saying such sappy things to others, but I kept them in my heart. That night, back in my rental room, I received a text message from an unknown number. It wasn't Zhou Xiaolan's number, nor my brother's or sister's, but the content made it clear who had arranged for it to be sent. "Little sister, Mom went to the hospital for a checkup yesterday. The doctor said her condition is very bad, muscle atrophy severe. Needs long-term care. Your brother is out of town. And my mother-in-law is in the hospital too, so I can't get away. Please, be good and come back. Mom talks about you every day. What's done is done. Are there any grudges between mother and daughter that last overnight? I stared at the text for a long time. Mother and daughter. When you need me. We're mother and daughter. When you don't need me. I'm an unfilial beast. Curse me when you want me to drink dirty water. Sweet talk me when you need someone to serve you. Such a thing doesn't exist in this world. Your family lives on lies and calculations. But don't you know, when that hand is played to the end, it will only blow up in your face. I took a screenshot of the message and saved it. Then I opened my chat with Xiaoting and sent her the link to the cloud folder I'd organized. Shouting. On Tuesday at 9 a.m. Stake out the entrance to the Changnan Property Transaction Center. When you see your mother stand up and walk, hold your phone steady. I woke up at 7 a.m. on Tuesday. Not because an alarm woke me, I woke naturally. The moment I opened my eyes, there was no grogginess or drowsiness. I was as clear-headed as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over me. Today was Tuesday. The day Zhou Xiaolan and Su Yali had agreed to go to the property transaction center to transfer the house. I lay in bed without getting up immediately, staring at the simple globe-shaped ceiling light fixture for a long time. Outside, the sky wasn't fully light yet. A grayish dawn light filtered through the curtains, casting a thin beam on the ceiling. Footsteps came from the floor above, the muffled sound of slippers on the floor. The office worker next door was already washing up, the faucet running and stopping. I rolled over, picked up my phone, and sent a message to Fong. I have some things to do this morning. Half day off. Fong replied almost instantly, with just 2 characters. Go ahead. No questions about what. No mention of unfinished work. Fong never asked these things. The greatest trust she gave me was not prying. I left at 7:30. The December morning was bitingly cold, my breath misting in the air. I bought a meat bun and a cup of hot soy milk from a roadside stall. Standing at the bus stop to eat, the soy milk burned my mouth, but its warmth spread from my throat to my stomach, and only then did I begin to feel alive. At 8:40, I arrived at the KFC opposite the Changnan Property Transaction Center. I chose a seat by the window, where I could clearly see the entrance to the center. It was 20 minutes until 9. I propped my phone on the table and dialed Zhou number, shouting, "Are you there?" "Yes. Yes. I'm behind the bus stop across the street." Her voice was a little nervous, her breathing heavy. "Sis, will they really come?" I told Auntie I was going to the mall. "If they don't show up, I'll have waited for nothing." "They'll come." 5 minutes before 9, a taxi pulled up at the entrance to the transaction center. Su Yali got out first, wearing a dark blue coat, carrying a document bag, her makeup meticulously done. After getting out, she bent down and pulled a folding wheelchair out of the back seat. Then, Zhou Xiaolan got out of the car from the other side. Not carried out by someone else, she pushed the door open herself and stepped out, both feet firmly on the ground. Walking on her own, the 9 a.m. sun fell on the steps of the transaction center and on Zhou Xiaolan's body. She stood beside the taxi, looked around to confirm no one she knew was nearby, then bent down to retrieve her cane from the back seat. Su Yali pushed the wheelchair over. Zhou Xiaolan sat down expertly, placed the cane across her knees, and pulled a gray blanket from her pocket, carefully covering her legs and hiding her feet. I watched all this through the KFC window, tapping my fingers lightly on the table. After covering herself, she adjusted the edges of the blanket, ensuring there were no gaps. Then Su Yali pushed her toward the entrance of the transaction center. My phone buzzed. Zhou sent a voice message, her voice shaking. "Sis, did you see that? Your mother walked out of the car herself." "She walked." "My hands are shaking right now." "I got the video, it's crystal clear. The whole thing. I saw it." I typed back, shouting, "Stay steady and keep filming. Get her from entering the hall, to queuing, to signing, to leaving. Don't stop. Don't get nervous. Keep the camera steady." The door of the transaction center was glass. From my position, I could see part of the hall. Zhou Xiaolan was pushed inside, paused briefly by the ticket machine. Then Su Yali took a number and pushed her to the waiting area. They waited for maybe 10 minutes before their number was called. Su Yali pushed Zhou Xiaolan to the service counter. I lifted my phone off the table, opened my camera, and aimed through the glass at the hall across the street. Although the distance was somewhat far, the image not entirely clear, I could see the general outlines. At the counter, Zhou Xiaolan stood up from her wheelchair, reached out to receive the documents handed by the clerk, and bent over to sign on the counter. Her legs were steady when standing, she didn't even need to hold onto the counter for balance. After signing, she sat back in the wheelchair, replaced the blanket, and was pushed out by Su Yali. From entry to exit, less than 40 minutes. A house worth over 1,000,000 yuan. Transferred into her son's name without a hitch. Mother and daughter left the transaction center and paused briefly at the entrance. Su Yali took out her phone and made a call, her expression triumphant, presumably reporting to Su Ziyuan. After the call, she pushed Zhou Xiaolan east along the sidewalk, likely to find a place to eat and celebrate. I followed them with my phone's camera, capturing them walking into a Cantonese restaurant. Through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows, I could clearly see them seated by the window. Zhou Xiaolan moved from the wheelchair to a dining chair, sitting just like a normal person. Flipping through the menu, she ordered several dishes and asked the server to add a pot of chrysanthemum tea, relaxed and comfortable. While waiting for the food to arrive, she took a piece of honeydew melon Su Yali offered, leaned back, and chewed slowly, a contented smile on her lips, a smile I had never seen during her illness. I stopped recording and dialed the police. Hello, I want to report a crime. Someone has been using a fabricated illness to fraudulently obtain Social Security reimbursements and community-based home care service subsidies. The fraud has lasted for 3 months, and I have preliminary documentation of the amount involved. Additionally, today she maliciously transferred her real estate property to another person. This is suspected fraud. I gave the address of the transaction center and the name of the Cantonese restaurant, then hung up. I didn't wait outside for the police to arrive, nor did I rush into the restaurant to confront them. I simply sat back down at my KFC seat, ordered another cup of hot coffee, and sipped it slowly. Catch the thief with the stolen goods. Catch the adulterer in the act. I understood this principle. If I barged in now, pointed at her nose, and yelled, all it would do is scare the snake. She had a million ways to make excuses. But if, in a public place, under third-party observation, she stood up on her own, then I wouldn't need to say a word. About 15 minutes later, a police car pulled up outside the Cantonese restaurant. 2 officers got out, 1 male, 1 female. The female officer carried a folder. They entered the restaurant and, guided by the server, approached Zhou Xiaolan and Su Yali's table. I saw Su Yali's expression change instantly. It was subtle, first confusion, then alertness, then a barely concealed panic. Zhou Xiaolan remained more composed. She didn't stand up, but sat firmly in her dining chair, spreading her hands in an innocent, I don't know anything gesture. The female officer asked something. Zhou Xiaolan pointed to the blanket on her lap, shook her head, her expression aggrieved and pitiful. The female officer then asked the server a few questions. The server gestured, probably saying, this guest walked in on her own. The male officer frowned, turned back to Zhou Xiaolan, raised his voice, and said sternly, your daughter reported that your Social Security filing states you are completely paralyzed. Zhou Xiaolan's body stiffened. Her hands gripped the armrests of her wheelchair, her knuckles white. Then the female officer made a decisive move. She stepped forward, bent down, and lifted the blanket off Zhou Xiaolan's lap. Beneath the blanket were not atrophied sick legs, but a perfectly normal pair of legs, wearing black cotton shoes, resting on the wheelchair's footrests. The female officer took her arm, gestured that the restaurant was crowded, and asked her to step outside to verify the situation. Zhou Xiaolan was forced to stand up from her wheelchair, not helped by Su Yali, but pushing up with her own legs. Her movements and reactions gave her away. Her lips quivered, her eyes reddened, not red from grievance, but from the shame and fury of being exposed in public. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but no sound came out. Suyali, panicking, rushed forward to stop the police, shouting, "My mother's legs really have problems. She's struggling to walk. The doctor said she needs to stay active." The female officer didn't argue. She just said calmly, "We'll take the specifics down at the station." The other diners in the restaurant set down their chopsticks and stared. Some people held up their phones to film. Others whispered to each other. An elderly woman pulled the server aside to ask what was going on. After a few whispered words, she changed expression instantly, spat in Zhou Xiaolan's direction, and muttered, "Make her daughter care for her." What a piece of work. Zhou Xiaolan heard that. Her face turned from red to purple to ashen. I sat in the KFC across the street, watching all of this through the glass. The coffee had gone cold. I wasn't drinking it anymore. I just sat quietly, watching Zhou Xiaolan being helped out of the restaurant by the police, watching Suyali frantically gather up the wheelchair and document bag and follow behind, watching them being loaded into the police car. At that moment, I felt no sense of vindication. No one might believe me if I said it, but I honestly didn't feel satisfied. I just felt very calm as when a stone is finally dropped into stagnant water. The ripples it creates slowly spreading, and you stand on the shore, watching the circles expand. In my past life, I had been drenched in 30 years of dirty water. Now it was their turn to taste it. I took out my phone, exported the video Zhou Ting had taken and the one I'd taken myself, and selected the 3 clearest segments. The first, Zhou Xiaolan walking out of the taxi on her own. The second, her standing up to sign at the transaction center. The third, her walking out of the restaurant with normal gait while being escorted by police. 3 angles, 3 locations, a complete record of the true physical condition of a paralyzed patient. I edited the 3 clips together and added a text description. Zhou Xiaolan was admitted to the hospital on September 2016 for a cerebral hemorrhage. The discharge diagnosis was paralysis of both lower limbs. She has long been receiving Social Security care subsidies as a disabled elderly person. The following videos were taken between December 2016 and January 2017. In the footage, the elderly woman walks, stands, and signs documents independently, without any assistance. Then I posted the video to every platform I could: Weibo, Douyin, community WeChat groups, the family group chat. When I posted it to the family chat, I added a comment: "Dear relatives and elders, the paralyzed mother you wanted me to go back and care for just walked herself to the property transaction center to transfer her house. Please keep a close watch on your wallets and your sympathy, don't be fooled." After posting, I set my phone face down on the table, leaned back in my chair, and let out a long breath. Outside, the sky was overcast, the clouds low and heavy, as if it might snow. It rarely snows in southern cities in December, but the damp cold is worse than snow. The chill seeps out from within your bones. But I wasn't cold. Within 10 minutes, my phone exploded. The first to respond in the family group chat was my uncle. He posted a long voice-to-text message, opening with the words, "What is this? Zhou Xiaolan, didn't you say your legs couldn't move at all?" Then came my aunt. She sent a voice message directly, her voice shrill enough to pierce the speaker. "Xiaolan, you've been lying to us for months. I've been bringing you food and meals every week, and you'd lie in bed saying you couldn't move. You were faking all along." Third uncle, female cousin, older male cousin, one after another. They appeared. The group chat was like a bomb had gone off. The most dramatic reversal in this whole play wasn't my counterattack, it was the sharp relatives realizing they'd been played for fools, selling themselves out while counting the money. I didn't respond to any messages in the chat. I just wanted everyone to see the truth. I didn't want to engage in a war of words. Let them fight. Let them confront each other. Let them realize for themselves who exactly they'd been helping attack me all these months. Suzy Yuan posted just one message in the group. 4 words. "This is slander." No one responded. Immediately after, Suyali called me. I didn't answer. She called 3 more times, all hung up. Then she sent a text message, her tone hysterical. "Suhi, have you lost your mind? What do you mean by posting that video in the family group chat? Do you know mom was taken away by the police? You've ruined her. Are you satisfied? I typed out a few words, thought better of them, deleted them. Finally, I sent back 3 characters. Satisfied. After that, I posted the 3 video clips on Weibo and Douyin. On Weibo, I added a few hashtags, including hashtag faking illness, hashtag deceiving daughter forfeicare, and hashtag social security fraud. On Douyin, I bought 50 yuan of promotion, set to push within the same city. By the time all of that was done, it was past 1 p.m. I'd been sitting at KFC too long. The staff were starting to look at me strangely. I packed up and left. Outside, the wind was cold and hard, cutting like a blade against my face. I pulled my padded jacket tighter and walked slowly down the street. At 2:30 p.m., the video on Weibo started being reshared by big accounts. One social news blogger reposted it with the caption, "Parasite in real life. Paralyzed mother walks herself to transfer property. Taken away by police for investigation." That repost had over 2,000 shares in half an hour, and over 1,000 comments. I sat on the bus back to the office, scrolling through the comments one by one. My blood pressure shot up after watching this. What kind of mother is this? This daughter has it so awful, she must have been getting trashed before. That sister is no good either, accompanying her and making excuses. Waiting for the follow-up. Hope this old hag gets tossed in jail for a few days to wake up. My finger stopped on the last comment, staring at the words, "Old hag." I didn't feel offended, nor did I feel vindicated. I just felt empty, like someone had scooped out my insides. She was my mother. Those people calling her an old hag. In theory, I should feel upset, but I didn't. I just felt like this matter was finally over, or rather, like it had finally been steered back onto the right course from a wrong direction. Zhou Ting sent me a message at that moment, her tone gleefully excited. "Sis, the group chat has completely exploded. Uncle said he'll never deal with your mother's affairs again. Auntie is calling your mother shameless in the chat. Third uncle said everyone who helped your mother attack you before now wants to apologize to you. Your sister said one line, 'Don't go too far,' and Auntie bombarded her with voice messages for a full 5 minutes. I replied with one character, 'Good. Sis. Aren't you happy?' I thought about it, then typed back, shouting, 'There's nothing to be happy about. I didn't do this for revenge. I just wanted everyone to know the truth, and to live my life clean and clear. I've already lived too tiredly for all those years. Now I just want to live my own days quietly.'" Zhou Ting replied with an emoji of a nodding figure and didn't ask further. At 3 p.m., I arrived at the office. When I walked in, Fong was standing by the printer, flipping through a stack of sample prints. She looked up and raised an eyebrow. "Half day off. And it's already past 3. Things are done. Handled properly. Handled properly." Fong looked at me for a few seconds. Didn't ask more. Just split the stack of prints in her hand and handed half to me. "All right then. Let's work. The client wants to change the trifold brochure into a quadfold. They said the previous design was too ordinary, not grand enough. Help me think about the layout." I took the prints, sat at my desk, turned on my computer, and started revising the quadfold layout. An afternoon plus an evening. 3 versions. Finally the client was satisfied. By the time I submitted, it was already 8 p.m. The office was empty except for me. I shut down my computer, packed up, and was about to leave. My phone buzzed again, a Weibo push notification. My video had been reposted by a major influencer with over 1 million followers, and the repost count had passed 50,000. The comment section was a mixed bag, some people attacking Zhou Xiaolan, some attacking my brother and sister, and some questioning, could this video be staged? If the daughter had this evidence, why did she expose it only after her mother was arrested, rather than before? Seeing that question, I didn't get angry. Questions were natural. In the face of truth, any question will eventually prove groundless. I opened the comments, found the most pointed one, and replied, "Thank you for your attention." The 3 scenes showing the elderly woman walking independently were taken at 3 different locations: the community hospital entrance, the property transaction center hall, and the Cantonese restaurant entrance, on different dates, in different clothes, each with a complete timestamp and location data. Verification welcome. After posting that, I put away my phone, locked the office door, and walked back to my rental room under the night sky. The next morning, things progressed further. A staff member from the community committee called, saying they'd received a notice from the Social Security Department for a cooperative investigation, and were verifying Zhou Xiaolan's disability rating determination and care subsidy application. The staff member's tone was polite. On the phone, they asked me a few questions. When was Zhou Xiaolan's paralysis diagnosis issued? Had she had any follow-up exams after discharge? Who had been responsible for her daily care? I answered all questions truthfully. When I got to, after my mother was discharged in September, I have not participated in her daily care since October. The staff member asked for the reason. I said, because I suspected her condition was not as severe as claimed. The caller was silent for 2 seconds, then said, Ms. Su, your suspicion is reasonable. In our preliminary check of Zhou Xiaolan's medical records at the community hospital over the past 3 months, we found no follow-up visits or treatment related to lower limb paralysis. The only visit was for a cold medication prescription. After hanging up, I recorded the call, with the other party's knowledge, of course, and saved it to the folder I'd named Evidence. At lunch, Su Ziyuan called me. This time, I answered, not because I wanted to hear an apology, but because I wanted to hear what he would say. His voice was hoarse and tired, as if he hadn't slept. Little sister, you've gone way too far this time. You've blown this up. Mother's reputation is completely destroyed. Do you know what they're saying about us in the family group chat now? Auntie says she's cutting ties with our family. Uncle says he can't show his face anymore. Third uncle's wife is going around telling everyone our family produced a fraudster. And, I asked. His voice rose. And then what else do you want? Mother's already got a police record. The insurance fraud is being investigated. The community is demanding she pay back the subsidies. Are you satisfied? Isn't this what you wanted, to ruin Mother's reputation? You've done it. You've won. I replied calmly, brother, I never wanted to win anything. On September 17th, at the hospital, when I chose to leave, you were the one who said, let her go, and don't come back. I left. I didn't come back. I survived on my own out there. These past 3 months, Mother has been telling everyone that I abused her, abandoned her, starved her. But the truth, she transferred the house to you early, gave all the love and resources to you and big sister, and pretended to be paralyzed so I would be her sole caregiver for the rest of her life. Do you think that's fair? If I hadn't kept the evidence, I'd be the one whose reputation was destroyed. Su Ziyuan was silent. Don't bother saying anything more. I continued, the house is already in your name. Figure out what support obligations that entails for you. All I want is a clean name. Keep the rest for yourself. After hanging up, I sat at my desk for a while in a daze. The sunlight outside the window filtered through the blinds, casting stripes on my desk, like dividers on a time ruler. My time finally belonged to me, no longer sliced into pieces by anyone's lies or moral blackmail. In the afternoon, the Social Security staff called again, saying that Zhou Xiaolan's insurance fraud case had been officially filed for investigation. The preliminary verified amount fraudulently obtained was 6,800 yuan, which had to be returned within a specified time along with a fine. Her low-income eligibility had also been suspended, and her community home care service subsidy had been revoked. The staff member asked if I needed to apply for victim compensation. I said, no, I don't need any compensation. What I need isn't money, it's justice. That night, I went back to my rental room and made myself a bowl of noodles. Plain noodles, slightly overcooked. I added a poached egg, some green vegetables, a splash of soy sauce and sesame oil. Very simple. But I ate it carefully, chewing every strand thoroughly before swallowing, like a baby learning to eat solid food for the first time. After finishing the noodles, I washed the dishes, wiped down the stove, and sat on the edge of my bed, opening my phone. The Weibo video had over 100,000 shares now. And it had reached number 3 on the local trending list. Countless people in the comments were sharing their own experiences of being morally blackmailed by family members. One said they'd cared for a paralyzed mother-in-law for 8 years only to be thrown out of the house. Another said their younger brother had taken their parents' inheritance and then accused her of being unfilial. Every comment was a story of blood and tears. Every story had a patsy used by family bonds. Scrolling through those comments, I suddenly felt less alone. So I wasn't the only one. So people used by relatives, morally blackmailed, drained of value and then kicked aside, they were everywhere. Most just chose to stay silent. I had chosen to speak the truth. My phone buzzed again, a message from Zhou Ting. Sis, your sister went to the police station this morning to pay the fine and pick up your mother. Your brother came back too. They had a huge fight at the old house. My aunt was passing by and heard it. Your brother was yelling at your sister for being stupid and picking such a public place. Your sister was yelling at your brother for taking the house and still blaming her, saying if it weren't for transferring it to him, this whole thing wouldn't have happened. Your mother was crying, saying none of you care about me. I gave you the house. What more do you want? I looked at the message and smiled slightly. See, from start to finish, no one cared about me. They only cared about the house, about money. About how much of the pie they got in this game. That was true in my past life. And it was true in this life. The only difference was that in my past life, I had exhausted 30 years of my life playing along with their performance. In this life, I was done. Not all suffering is rewarded with equal returns. Some people will only see your kindness as weakness, your sacrifice as their due. When you learn to say no, they'll attack you with even more vicious words. Because in their logic, an obedient tool suddenly becoming disobedient is a betrayal. Well, to hell with being a tool. I leaned against the headboard, put my phone down next to my pillow, and closed my eyes. Outside, the wind howled, and the smell of cumin and chili wafted up from the barbecue stall downstairs. Someone was playing an old pop song, its melody drifting up in fragments. That night, I slept soundly, no dreams, no waking with a start. I slept straight from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. When I woke, the sun was just right. Another clear day. The dirty water I'd flung out was slowly, drop by drop, flowing back to where it belonged. And I would keep moving forward, walking my own life. In the period before the new year, my life suddenly became quiet. Quiet to the point of being unreal, like a soldier who'd been fighting for a long time. Suddenly told, the war is over. You can go home. You stand on the cleared battlefield, looking around, not sure what to do next. The old house was completely settled. After Zhou Xiaolan and Su Yali returned from the police station, the family group chat went dead silent, where there used to be dozens of messages a day. Now no one spoke for 3 or 5 days at a time. Occasionally, someone would post a link or a New Year's greeting image, but it would just hang there, alone, with no responses. My uncle truly cut off ties with Zhou Xiaolan. He sent word that she should not come to him anymore. He didn't have a sister like that. My aunt didn't cut ties, but she said something behind Zhou Xiaolan's back to my third aunt, which Zhou Ting relayed to me. Aunt said, I've finally figured out Xiaolan. If she can scheme like that against her own daughter, who else can she not scheme against? Third aunt replied, thank goodness Xiao he got away. When Zhou Ting passed these words to me, her tone had a kind of smug, I told you so, quality. I didn't join in her smugness. I just felt very tired, a bone-deep exhaustion. 30 years of grudges in my past life. 3 months of counterattack in this life, all the emotions had been burned up, leaving only a pile of cold ash. But life had to go on. In January, the company had its annual party. At the party, Fong announced my formal promotion to design lead, base salary raised to 6,000, plus project commissions and year-end bonus, bringing my monthly income to around 10,000. For the Suhi of my past life, that number would have been unimaginable. She hesitated for an entire month just to buy herself a 200 yuan cotton coat. After the party, Fong called me into her office separately. She took a bag out of her cabinet and handed it to me. Inside was a gray cashmere scarf, soft as baby skin when I touched it. Year-end gift, everyone gets one. But yours I picked out specially. Fong leaned against the edge of her desk, arms crossed, looking at me. Xiao Su, how long have you been with the company? Over 4 months. Over 4 months. She enunciated the words slowly. From a probationary girl to the design lead handling a whole project independently. Do you know what I admire most about you? It's not the quality of your designs. It's a kind of quietness you have, different from other young people. When other young people achieve something small, they want the whole world to know. You're always understated. You weren't particularly happy about the raise. Weren't particularly excited about landing the project. It's as if you've been through a lot. I looked down, touched the scarf, and smiled. I didn't explain. Fong didn't press. She patted me on the shoulder, said, "Keep up the good work," and let me go. Walking out of her office, I put the scarf around my neck. The cashmere warmth against my skin felt like a gentle hug. This scarf was dark gray, unadorned, simple, but it was more precious than anything I'd owned in my past life, because it was given to me sincerely, unconditionally, without requiring me to pay the cost of my life in return. I didn't go back to the old house for New Year's. On New Year's Eve, I spent it in my rental room, alone, a small table, a laptop, the Spring Festival gala playing. On the table were 3 dishes, braised spare ribs, cucumber salad, and frozen dumplings. The ribs had been braised for nearly 2 hours, so tender they fell off the bone at the touch of chopsticks. The dumplings were frozen ones from the supermarket, some had burst while boiling, their filling floating in the pot. I poured myself a glass of cola, raised it to the laptop screen, and said, "Happy New Year." The glass clinked against the air, a clear sound. Outside, the sound of firecrackers was continuous, and fireworks burst in the night sky, red, green, purple, illuminating the outlines of the gray self-built houses in the urban village. I stood by the window, bowl in hand, watching the fireworks, chewing a spare rib, and thought, so being alone for New Year's isn't so scary after all. Every New Year's Eve in my past life, I had spent at the old house. Zhou Xiaolon lay in bed. My brother and sister went to their own homes. I sat on the caregiver's chair with a bowl of dumplings, listening to the TV and the fireworks outside. When the dumplings were finished and the Spring Festival gala ended, the New Year came. I spent nearly 30 New Year's Eves like that, each one identical, like a broken cassette playing the same dull melody over and over. But this New Year's Eve was different. Although I was still alone, it was my choice. I could cook spare ribs, drink cola, stop eating halfway to watch the fireworks from the window, and at midnight open my phone to grab some red envelopes. I did what I wanted to do, without needing to check anyone's mood. At midnight, my phone started going crazy with notifications. In the work group chat, people were exchanging New Year's wishes, sending red envelopes, grabbing them, a chaotic mess. I divided the 200 yuan I'd prepared in advance into 10 red envelopes and sent them to the group. Then I sent a separate 58 yuan red envelope to Fong, with the note, "Thank you, Fong Jia. Happy New Year." Fong accepted it instantly and replied with a rolling eyes emoji, then sent 3 larger red envelopes back with the note, "Boss's treat. No thanks." I opened them, total of 300 yuan. That was Fong. The way she expressed her care was never sentimental, always through direct actions that showed she remembered you. But she never said sappy things. Then, Zhou Ting sent a video call. I accepted. Her round face appeared on the screen. The background, the living room at her mother's house, the TV loud. Zhou Ting shouted at the camera, "Sis, Happy New Year. Look at the giant buns my mom made, leak an egg. Bigger than your face." She turned the camera toward the dining table, crowded with a full New Year's Eve feast and a plate of enormous buns, all steamy. My aunt came out of the kitchen carrying a pot of soup, glanced at me as she passed the camera, and waved, "Xiao He, Happy New Year. Eat well out there. Don't go without." "Got it, Auntie. Happy New Year." After hanging up, I set my phone on the table and stared at the image of that full New Year's Eve feast, replaying it in my mind. Aunt might not have spoken up for me in my past life, but at least after the truth came out, she didn't keep pretending not to know. That was enough. I didn't expect anyone to be grateful to me, I only hoped they would face the facts. On the day of the Lantern Festival, Zhou Ting came to see me. She carried a plastic bag of things and knocked on my door, immediately launching into her usual dramatic entrance as soon as it opened. "Sis, this room of yours is too small. I'd hit the wall in 2 steps. Then she put the plastic bag on my desk. Inside was a box of tangyuan, a bag of fried meatballs my aunt had made, and a jar of pickled garlic she'd made herself. "The meatballs are from my mom. She told me to bring them to you. The tangyuan I bought. The pickled garlic I made myself." Zhou Ting, as if she lived there, plopped down on my bed and swung her short legs. "Sis, you've lost so much weight. Look at your wrist, it's barely thicker than my finger." I sat down next to her and opened the box of tangyuan, peanut-filled. My favorite. Shouting, "Thank you." "Thank me for what?" Zhou Ting waved a hand, then lowered her voice and leaned toward me. "Sis, let me tell you something." "What?" "Your mother." "No. Zhou Xiaolan, she went back to the hospital a few days ago." My hands, which had been opening the tangyuan box, paused. Then I continued. Once opened, I poured the tangyuan into a small pot, turned on the induction cooker, and started heating the water. What happened? For real this time. Zhou Ting's usual joking manner was gone, replaced by a rare seriousness. "During New Year's, your brother was too ashamed to let her visit anyone. Your sister didn't come back to see her. She was alone in the old house. The home helper had gone back for the holidays. No one cooked for her. On the 3rd day of the new year, she tried to go into the kitchen to heat up food herself, fell, and fractured her right arm. The neighbors heard the commotion and called emergency. The water boiled. I dropped the tangyuan into the pot one by one. The white spheres sank, then slowly floated back up. Steam rose, warm on my face, carrying the scent of peanuts and sticky rice. Then what? Then your brother went to the hospital for one look, then left, said the company had just reopened after the holidays and was too busy. Your sister actually went, but only stayed half a day before leaving, said something about her mother-in-law's house. Your mother lay alone in the hospital for 3 days before the community arranged for a caregiver." Zhou Ting's face, which had been somewhat gloating, now had an uncomfortable sympathy instead. "Sis, do you think? Is this her karma?" I scooped the cooked tangyuan into 2 bowls, one for Zhou Ting, one for me. The tangyuan were white and round, bobbing gently in the bowls, the thin sticky rice skins showing the dark brown peanut filling inside. I bit into one, blew on it, took another bite. It burned my mouth, and I sucked in air. "There's no such thing as karma," I said slowly, swallowing the hot tangyuan. "She just finally reached the age where there's no one left to catch her fall. Before, there was me. No matter what she did, someone caught her. Now there's no one. So she fell. That's all." Zhou Ting lowered her head and ate her tangyuan in silence. She probably thought my reaction was too cold, but she didn't know that the Suhi of my past life had already cried every tear she had. In this life, I had no more emotions left to give to that woman. After the Lantern Festival, everything seemed to return to a quiet rhythm. Work, overtime, projects, saving money. Each day was simple and full, like a clear stream, without huge waves or storms, just flowing quietly, determinedly forward. At the end of February, I landed a big project. A new mother and baby brand needed a complete visual package for its spring new product launch, including the homepage design for their online store, product detail pages, and storefront window posters. This project was one Fong had fought for me specifically. The budget was substantial, and the timeline was very tight. I worked with 2 new interns. From initial planning to first draft to final revisions, the whole process took nearly a month. During that time, I often stayed at the office until the early morning. Sometimes I fell asleep on my desk from exhaustion, and when I woke up, there would be a jacket draped over me. I never knew who had put it there. On the day I submitted the final work at the end of March, the female brand manager on the client side stood up in the meeting room, in front of everyone, and took my hand. She said something I'll remember for a long time. "Ms. Su, I've been in brand management for years and have worked with many designers, but you're the first person I feel truly understood the brand story. There's something in your designs that I can't quite describe, it seems like empathy. I smiled and said thank you, but in my heart, a voice said, you're right. I do know. What does the mother and baby product I designed want to express? It wants to express a kind of unconditional tenderness, a kind of care without any strings attached. Because I never got that kind of thing growing up, so I understand its value better than anyone. In April, the company organized a team-building retreat to a hot spring resort in the suburbs for 2 days and 1 night. I hadn't planned to go, but Fong insisted on putting my name on the list, saying, you're the lead if you don't go. How can the junior employees feel comfortable going? After soaking in the hot springs in the evening, my colleagues gathered in groups in the hotel rooms to play cards and chat. I'm not good at card games, so I put on my coat and went for a walk alone. It was a bit chilly in the countryside in April, but the air was incredible. One deep breath filled my lungs with grass and earth. The street lamps cast dim yellow light on the path, and unknown insects chirped in the grass. In the distance, white steam rose from the hot spring pools. Like a dream against the night, I walked along the path and sat down on a bench. Above me was a large locust tree, its canopy blocking half the sky. When the wind blew, the leaves rustled. Someone sat down next to me. I turned to look. It was the company's new photographer, 2 years older than me, named Chin Yuan. He wore black-rimmed glasses, and his eyes crinkled into slits when he smiled. At the office, he spoke little, always quietly editing photos in the corner, occasionally looking up to meet my gaze, giving a small smile before returning to his work. What are you doing sitting here alone? He asked, getting some air. It's too loud inside. Right. That card-playing bunch sounds like they're arguing. He smiled. The two of us sat on that bench, chatting about this and that, work anecdotes, recent movies, our hometowns. Chin Yuan said his hometown was a small city in the north. Both his parents were teachers, and his younger sister was still in college. After graduating, he'd come straight to this city, worked at a photo studio for a year, then transferred to Fong. What about you? He asked. I was silent for a moment, gazing at the distant hot spring pools, then said to Chin Yuan, my family situation is a bit complicated. To put it simply, my mother's health wasn't great. I took care of her for a while, but then I realized she didn't actually need my care, so I moved out. I'm basically not in contact with them anymore. Chin Yuan didn't press. He just sat quietly beside me, giving me just the right amount of silence. The silence wasn't awkward, it was a kind of comfortable companionship, as if to say, you don't have to tell me, but if you do, I'm listening. What do you do during the holidays since you're alone? He asked. I manage on my own, I said. For New Year's Eve, I made 3 dishes and boiled some dumplings. It was pretty good. He turned his head to look at me. The streetlight reflected in his glasses, glimmering. Next New Year's, if you're still alone, you can come with me. My family gatherings are loud and messy. It's a hassle. I could take you back to help share the firepower. The words were half joking, but they gave me a little jolt. I didn't show it. I just smiled and treated it as a joke. In mid-May, the Mother and Baby brand project officially launched. On the launch day, the brand's social media account posted a tweet with a picture of the design poster our team had made, and the text, "Thank you to Suhee and her design team for infusing our brand with warmth and strength." The tweet got a lot of engagement within the industry. Several people from other companies reached out through mutual acquaintances to ask, "Who is Suhee?" Fong was overjoyed. At afternoon tea, she rolled out a cake cart and announced in front of the whole company, Best Project of the Quarter Award, Mother and Baby Brand Team, 30,000 yuan bonus. Project Lead Suhee, 10,000 yuan individual bonus. Colleagues started clapping, some egging me on to buy everyone bubble tea. I laughed and agreed. Amid the cheering, I was pushed up to cut the cake. As the knife went down, I got cream all over my hands. I licked a finger, sweet, very sweet. Someone took a photo of me licking my finger and posted it to the workgroup chat. Chin Yuan followed up with a message. Boss, can we use this as a company promo picture? Caption, design girl licking her finger. Below was a string of, ha 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 ha, emojis. I replied with a, rolling eyes. emoji and put my phone in my pocket, not noticing that the corners of my mouth were still turned up. That night, I returned to my rental room. As I opened the door and turned on the light, nothing happened. The bulb had burned out. I stood in the dark for a few seconds, then turned on my phone's flashlight, pulled out the spare bulb I kept in the dresser drawer, and moved a chair over to change it. The old bulb was hot when I unscrewed it. I made a hissing face, screwed in the new one, tightened it, stepped down, and flipped the switch. The light came on. Warm yellow light filled the small room again. I stood alone in the light, looking at the Sugi team poster on the wall, the piles of design sketches on the desk, the mustard yellow trench coat hanging in the wardrobe, that coat I'd bought for 799 yuan on an autumn night. Still so beautiful, its color as bright as ginkgo leaves in autumn. It had been 8 months since the afternoon I'd woken up in that hospital room. 8 months ago, I'd been slumped on a caregiver's chair, the smell of disinfectant on me, less than 2,000 yuan in my pocket, and a rope called Mother, choking the life out of me. 8 months later, I had a stable job, a stable income, my own rental room, colleagues who respected me, clients who recognized me, and friends who quietly accompanied me. I didn't need anyone to give me happiness, I could give it to myself. On a Saturday afternoon in June, I went to the supermarket, passing by the outdoor coffee terrace of a shopping mall. I saw a familiar silhouette in the distance. That silhouette was all too familiar, gray-white hair, hunched back, sitting in a wheelchair, a thin blanket over her lap. Standing next to the wheelchair was a middle-aged woman, head down looking at her phone. Probably a caretaker. It was Zhou Xiaolan. I stopped walking, standing in the crowd, looking at her from a dozen meters away. She had lost a lot of weight after the bone fracture from New Year's. It seemed like some of her life force had been drained, her cheeks sunken, her eyes deeper, the hand resting on the wheelchair armrest as withered as a twig. She sat blankly in the wheelchair, her gaze unfixed, her expression empty. That blankness wasn't calm, it was total desolation, like the aftermath of a storm. Nothing growing in sight. The caretaker finished looking at her phone and pushed the wheelchair forward. When they reached the crosswalk waiting for the light, Zhou Xiaolan tilted her head slightly, turned her face, and her gaze fell directly in my direction. Across the moving crowd, our eyes met. She recognized me. In that instant, a kind of light appeared in her eyes. Not the light of love, not the light of remorse, but the greedy, desperate light of someone drowning who sees a piece of driftwood. Her lips trembled and parted, leaning half out of her wheelchair, reaching her hand toward me. Xiaohe. Her voice was hoarse, like sandpaper on glass. I looked at her, at this woman who had drained me dry for 30 years in my past life, who had joined with everyone to push me into hell at the end of her life. Tears pooled in her eyes, her lips trembling so much she couldn't form complete sentences. She looked as if she'd had some great awakening, some deep regret. But I had already been reborn once. The sleeping pills, the slashed wrists, the fall from the high-rise, every desperate night of my past life reminded me. This woman's tears were the cheapest thing in the world. In my past life, I had thought her deathbed turning was her conscience waking up. I later learned she just couldn't bear to leave any remaining value to the foolish daughter who had given everything. I didn't step forward. I didn't step back. I just stood there, looking calmly at her for 3 seconds. Then I averted my gaze and turned away. Behind me, a hoarse wail. Xiaohe, Xiaohe, come back. Mother was wrong, mother really was wrong. The shout was jarringly loud on the busy street. Several passers-by turned to look. The caretaker tried to calm her, but her cries only grew louder, more anguished, as if she were trying to tear out her own insides. I didn't look back. Carrying my shopping bag, I walked away step by step. The cries were scattered by the wind, swallowed by the traffic, and finally disappeared into the crowd behind me. That evening, Qin Yuan asked me to see a movie. It was some kind of comedy, the kind with low-hanging humor. Throughout the movie, the audience burst into laughter occasionally, and Qin Yuan laughed so hard he nearly spilled his popcorn. I sat in the dark, wearing a smile, but my mind kept drifting to that trembling silhouette in the wheelchair from the afternoon. But this time, there was no sting. No guilt, only a faint certainty. How much of those cries was true regret? And how much was her finally realizing that the one person in this world willing to catch her fall would never come back? The tears were real, and the lies she'd told for 30 years were real, but I no longer had any interest in distinguishing between them. After the movie, Qin Yuan and I walked along the riverbank for a while. The evening breeze was pleasant, and the lights of the buildings across the river reflected on the water, turning into a river of stars. We walked side by side, close, but not too close. The backs of our hands occasionally brushed, then pulled away. Qin Yuan suddenly stopped, turned to face me, his expression a little nervous. Suhi, there's something I want to tell you. Go ahead. Do you know why I asked you to see a movie today? Because your group buy tickets were about to expire. He choked, then rubbed the back of his head. The tips of his ears were visibly reddening. Those tickets, they were about to expire. Yes, but that's not the only reason. The main reason is, I've been wanting to ask you out for a long time. I just haven't dared. He took a deep breath and pulled something out of his pocket, a box of chocolates. The heart-shaped kind you get at the mall. The bow on top was a little crumpled, it had clearly been in his pocket for a while. Suhi, I know the things you've been through are probably far more than I can imagine. His voice was trembling a little, but his eyes were steady, and I know I might not be the best guy. But what I want to say is, from now on, no matter if it's New Year's Eve, Lantern Festival, or just any regular day, if you don't want to be alone, I'm always here. I looked at the chocolates, then at his face, tense enough to cramp, and couldn't help but smile. It was the kind of smile that bubbled up from deep inside, impossible to suppress. I reached out, took the chocolates, tore open the wrapper, broke off a piece, and put it in my mouth. Dark chocolate, slightly bitter, but with a sweet aftertaste. Not bad, I said. Just that. You're not going to say anything else. He sounded anxious. Qin Yuan, I said, still chewing the chocolate slowly. I'm not an easy person to be with. I've always been independent, I'm not used to relying on others. I don't act cute, and I'm not good at sweet talk. At work, I can handle the toughest clients, but I've never learned how to do this, being in a relationship. Are you sure you want to pursue me? Yes. No regrets. No regrets. Looking at his resolute gaze, I felt a spot in my heart that had been frozen for a long time slowly begin to thaw. It was a chunk of ice that had frozen from my past life into this one, so thick I thought it would never melt. But now, it was dripping away, drop by drop. All right, then, I said. First, walk with me along this riverbank to the end. Then I'll buy you bubble tea. He froze for a second, then split into a grin, smiling like a little kid who'd just gotten a gold star from his teacher. We continued walking along the riverbank. This time, our distance was much closer. When the backs of our hands met, he tentatively hooked his pinky finger around mine. I didn't pull away. The river breeze blew gently, sweeping away the last of summer's heat. Across the river, the city was lit up with 1,000 lights, each window a story. And there I was on this side of the river, with one more person by my side. A small lamp lit in my heart as well. In early July, a bubble tea shop opened downstairs from the company. On opening day, they had a buy one get one free offer, and Qin Yuan dragged me to line up. We waited 20 minutes and bought 2 cups of milk tea. When he bit into a pearl, he accidentally bit his tongue and winced in pain. I leaned against the counter, laughing so hard I spilled some tea on my clothes. By the time we got back to the office, we were already 15 minutes late. Fong was standing at the front desk, her gaze sweeping over both our faces before stopping on Qin Yuan. I gave him a push in the back, and he stumbled forward a step, stammering something about having an upset stomach. Fong raised an eyebrow, a half smile on her face. Qin Yuan's stomach was upset for 20 minutes straight. Then she pointed at my clothes and asked, "Did the bubble tea upset your stomach too?" A few colleagues in the office immediately broke into poorly suppressed laughter. Qin Yuan's ears were red as if about to bleed. I hurried to my desk, head down, and only realized as I wiped my shirt that the corners of my mouth were still turned up. That afternoon, Fong called me into her office, closed the door, and said in a very casual tone, Qin Yuan's a good guy, reliable. But don't let it interfere with your work. I said, got it. As I turned to leave, she added from behind, Xiao Su, the way you are now, is much better than before. I turned back to look at her. When you first arrived, there was a kind of glass wall between you and the world. You were polite, competent, hardworking, but you kept your distance from everyone. Fong looked at me, her eyes warm. Now that glass wall is broken. I don't know who broke it for you. But it's good that it's broken. Standing at the office doorway with a stack of documents in my arms, my nose suddenly stung. It wasn't sadness, it was a feeling of being moved. This feeling of being seen, of being cared about, I had never experienced it in my past life. Back then, my world had only Zhou Xiaolon in it, and Zhou Xiaolon's eyes had never held me. In August, Qin Yuan took me to see his rental apartment, in a new development to the north. A one-bedroom, not large, but clean and tidy. He had a pot of pothos hanging on the balcony, its vines trailing down, a large patch of green. I was standing on the balcony looking at the pothos when he came up behind me and gently wrapped his arms around me. When my lease is up, do you want to move in? His voice was muffled, his chin resting on top of my head. I'll sleep on the couch. Who said anything about you sleeping on the couch? I said, then realized what I'd just said. My face burned. He laughed from behind me, the vibration of his chest traveling through my spine, making my heartbeat skip. Where do you want me to sleep, then? He asked. Scram. I jabbed his stomach with my elbow. He let out an exaggerated, ouch, and collapsed onto the couch, playing dead. His eyes were closed, but the corners of his mouth were turned up. September 17th, exactly 1 year since the afternoon of my rebirth. I took the day off. In the morning, I went to the bank and put the 60,000 yuan I'd saved over the past year into a fixed-term deposit, an emergency fund. At noon, I went to the mall and bought a hoodie for Qin Yuan as a birthday gift. His birthday was in October, so I was buying it early. In the afternoon, I went alone to the hospital in the southern district. Not to see anyone, just to stand across the street, looking at it from a distance. The outpatient building was still the same outpatient building. The flow of people in and out was still just as hurried. Some walked quickly with medical folders in hand. Others walked slowly supporting elderly relatives. Some sat on a flower bed by the gate, staring blankly into space, their expressions lost, like they'd just received bad news. How many of these people had come to fulfill their filial duty, and how many had come to be bound by it? I didn't know. What I did know was that 1 year ago today, I had walked out of this building with less than 2,000 yuan in my pocket and a life that was shattered beyond repair. That night, I made a decision. I put the key to the old house, the one I'd had for 30 years but never used in this life, into an envelope and mailed it to Su Ziyuan. Tucked inside the envelope was a small note with a single sentence. I'm returning the key to the old house. From now on, I, Su-hee, have nothing whatsoever to do with that family. Do not contact me. The words on the note were written with great pressure. The pen tip made a scratching sound as it moved across the paper. After finishing, I set down the pen, picked up the envelope, and weighed it in my hand, very light, almost weightless. Just like that relationship I'd ripped out of my life. After sending the letter, Qin Yuan made dinner at his place. 2 dishes and a soup, tomato scrambled eggs, braised chicken wings, and seaweed egg drop soup. The eggs in the tomato dish were overcooked. The chicken wings were a bit salty. The soup had too much seaweed and tasted like chewing on grass. But I ate every last bite. Not a grain of rice left. After dinner, he washed the dishes, and I stood in the kitchen doorway watching him. His back was broad, the apron tied around his waist making him look a bit awkward, but very earnest. When he finished washing and turned around, he saw me standing there, froze, then smiled, flicking dish soap foam at me with both hands. What are you staring at? Go sit on the couch. I'll peel you an apple. I went to the couch and sat down, hugging his wrinkled throw pillow. Qin Yuan was terrible at peeling apples. By the time he finished, only half the apple was left. He sheepishly handed me the half, said he'd eat the rest, and shoved the thick peel and fruit flesh into his mouth. He chewed with a frown, muttering, "It's sour." Need to get fruit from a different shop next time. Outside the window. The city at night, 1,000 lights twinkling like stars. On TV, an old black and white film was playing. The lights across the river reflected on the pothose leaves, flickering. I leaned against Chinyuan's shoulder, chewing on the bumpy apple he'd peeled. He looked down at me, reached out, and ruffled my hair, then said something that seemed to come out of nowhere. Suhi, you'll never have to spend the holidays alone again. My eyes suddenly blurred with something. It was like 31 years' worth of tears had finally found a place to fall. I didn't say anything, just curled tighter into his chest and took another big bite of the apple. Outside, the city lights lay like a warm tide, and I was no longer the person drowning. What do you think of this story? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I look forward to hearing your voice.